Chapter 1086. There were a total of 12 numbers on the infinite divine dial. Each number represented a different level of bloodline talent. The infinite divine dial was activated the moment it sensed the bloodline power. Every step the needle took required the support of a stronger bloodline power. Those with weak bloodline power would struggle to reach 2 or 3, which would basically be the end of the trial. Those who were slightly stronger would reach 4 or 5. It was worth mentioning that the further one went, the greater the difference in bloodline power represented by these numbers. Therefore, many people could not continue after a few steps, because their bloodline power was not enough to make the needle move to the next number. But now, Dugayu had jumped to 3 in the blink of an eye. They did not even have time to react. However, just as everyone was in shock, the needle on the infinite divine dial had jumped forward again. 4. Many people held their breaths in shock as they stared unblinkingly at the scene on the mountain peak, afraid that they would miss something. As long as she took another step, she would pass the final test. Then, the position of princess consort would be at her fingertips. At this moment, there were many more people who were more nervous than Chu Luiyue. Jiang Hetian and the rest were already stunned by the scene before them. Just a moment ago, they thought that Dugayu would fail, but who knew that in the blink of an eye, the needle of the infinite divine dial had already pointed to 4. Jiang Ji1 clenched his sleeves. No way, so many people had been trapped here before, she should not be an exception. How could an outsider have any bloodline power to speak of? Chu Luiyue looked up. The light on the infinite divine dial seemed to be getting stronger as the needle moved. At this moment, half of her hand was almost covered by that dazzling golden light. As the water droplet in her dantian spun, the power that flowed into her palm was also increasing. Chu Luiyue blinked her eyes when she saw the number 4 written on it. Didn't they say that reaching 5 meant passing? She thought it would be difficult, but she had already reached this step without much effort. Were they serious about what they said before, or were they just trying to scare her? If the people below knew what Chu Luiyue was thinking, they would probably vomit blood. Who would use this kind of thing to scare you? Who can you blame for being a pervert? Just as these thoughts flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, the needle moved forward again. Crack! The needle had reached 5. Halfway up the mountain, everyone was dead silent. The mountain breeze at night carried a hint of coldness that poured into one's neck, almost chilling one's heart. Jiang Ji1 shuddered. Her face was pale, and she bit her lips until they bled. It was as if a basin of ice water was poured over his head, chilling him to the bone. Dugayu actually succeeded so easily. Ziyuan. It took her a while to react before she heard Jiang Hetian calling her from the side. Jiang Hetian's expression was also complicated. Ziyuan, she might have used some tricks to do it. Don't take it to heart. You see, the matter of her contracting 2 divine beasts was still strange. Who knew that this time, Dad? Jiang Ji1 interrupted him and twitched the corner of her mouth without a smile. If it was anything else, it would be fine, but that's the infinite divine dial. Who could play tricks on it? If Dugayu could do this, then everyone had to admit it. Jiang Hetian choked and didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only keep his mouth shut and pray in his heart for Dugayu to stop and not continue. Crack! The needle moved to the middle position. It officially pointed to 6. Chu Luiyue found that the interval between each jump was slightly longer than before. At this time, of course, she didn't know that this speed was far beyond the expectations of the people below. When the needle moved to the bottom, Chu Luiyue stood closer and saw it more clearly. The golden needle was emitting a lustrous glow. It was sacred and powerful. There were intricate and exquisite patterns carved on it. Countless lines intersected, outlining a strange pattern. It looked like some kind of cloud pattern, but it was much more intricate and complicated. Just by looking at the patterns on it, Chu Luyue seemed to feel a majestic and ancient aura coming at her. At the same time, the water droplet in her dantian seemed to be summoned by something, and the 7 magnificent patterns rippled with the water droplet. The force surged. The needle passed the middle position and continued to jump forward. In the blink of an eye, it had turned to the shocking 7. Impossible, impossible. At this time, Elder Yu Jing and the others finally couldn't hold back and changed their expressions. If it was said that Dugayu could barely pass, they could accept it. But now, everything clearly showed that her bloodline talent was very strong. In the whole Yuntian Tower, to be able to achieve this result, she was definitely a top genius. It's strange that she can summon the infinite divine dial. In my opinion, she might not be an outsider. As for her true identity, I'm afraid we'll have to investigate carefully. Elder Qing Chen stroked his beard and said meaningfully. Not an outsider. Then who would she be? Could it be that she's really from a clan in the Divine Ruins world? Elder Yu Jing asked doubtfully. Then why didn't she directly reveal her true identity and instead pretended to be an outsider? Ordinary people in the Divine Ruins world wouldn't be interested in doing such a thing and lowering their status for no reason. Let's just wait and see. Anyway, when the infinite divine dial finally stops, her bloodline totem will appear. Elder Qing Chen said calmly, when the time comes, everything will be known. When the needle pointed to 7, the strange feeling in Chu Liuyue's heart grew stronger. Those people said that it was very difficult, but she didn't seem to feel anything. Logically speaking, this result should be very good, right? Even if she stopped here, as long as she reached this number, it would be enough for her to take the position of princess consort. But she seemed to be able to continue. Chu Liuyue's heart was tangled for a while. While he was lost in thought, the needle jumped again to the 8th position. At this time, the bloodline talent she displayed was the same as Jiang Hetian's. At this time, everyone had quieted down. For some reason, looking at the figure on the top of the mountain and the huge shining infinite divine dial, Jiang Jiwan's heart suddenly trembled. If this continued, then wouldn't Dugayu and her click? The huge needle didn't have any intention of stopping and continued to jump. 9. Digression, my whole day was ruined by a mouthful of chili. I'll struggle for a while. There's another one around 7. Chapter 1087. Jiang Jiwan's vision turned black, and she almost fainted. The rest of the people were speechless as they looked at this scene and were at a loss of what to do. Hee hee. I knew this girl could do it. 36 respected Elder Ming's face was full of smiles, and he simply couldn't close his mouth. Look. 9. That's 9. Just based on this result, she's already stronger than many people. Right, Yu Jing, what did you say just now? You said that you, is an outsider and not worthy of the position of princess consort. 36 respected Elder Ming dug his ears. Respected Elder Yu Jing's expression was extremely ugly. He didn't expect Dugayu to really have such capabilities. Now, no matter what, she was firmly in the position of princess consort. 36 respected Elder Ming was very happy when he saw that these few people were refuted until they couldn't say anything. He then slowly looked towards Rongxiu. Your Highness, why aren't you going to fetch the girl down personally? Rongxiu narrowed his eyes slightly, and there were waves in his eyes. There's no hurry now. What? 36 respected Elder Ming was stunned. He blinked his eyes and then gasped. You mean, she can still continue to break through? Almost no one believed that Chu Luyue could still continue. In the entire Yuntian Tower, those who could reach 9 were already very rare. After so many years, including Jiang Jiwan, there were less than 5 of them. There was no one who could go any higher. Oh, that wasn't right either. Rongxiu, the saint, was the only one who had reached a higher level. Moreover, he had directly skipped 10 and reached 11. He was undoubtedly the top genius in the Yuntian Tower for thousands of years. Other than him, the others were at most 9. Therefore, everyone subconsciously thought that Chu Luiyue should have ended after reaching this number. But at this moment, Rong Xiao and 36 respected Elder Ming's words suddenly woke them up. Many people looked up. Someone suddenly yelled. Her bloodline totem hasn't appeared yet. Yes. The bloodline totem would only appear after the end of the level evaluation. But now, the infinite divine dial that was emanating golden light was as clean as before. Everything clearly indicated that her bloodline test was not over yet. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the origin power surging wildly in his palm. Power surged around her body, causing her clothes to flutter. At this moment, although she couldn't hear the various discussions and exclamations below, she was very clear in her heart that she should have reached an extremely crucial juncture. 9. His rank was even higher than Jiang Hetian's. If she were to be taken out, she would definitely be qualified to be a princess consort. She was actually thinking about another thing now. How did she make the needle tick? Could it be that she also had that so-called bloodline power in her body? But why didn't she know about it? Moreover, she was indeed curious to see what level she could reach. Thinking of this, she pursed her lips and poured in another stream of force. Boom! A bright light suddenly erupted from the infinite divine dial. The light was so dazzling that Chu Luiyue instinctively raised her other hand to cover her eyes. However, at this moment, a faint sound came from the everlasting divine dial. Chu Luiyue felt strange and forced her eyes open to take a look. When she saw the scene in front of her clearly, she was instantly stunned. Because the patterns on the infinite divine dial's needle had suddenly come to life. Streaks of light flew out and attached themselves to the center of the everlasting divine dial. They intersected with each other, as if forming some kind of pattern. At the same time, a familiar sound came, and the needle moved to 10. Looking at the pattern that suddenly appeared in front of her, Chu Luiyue was stunned at first, but then she recognized that it was the strange blood-colored rune that had appeared in her palm previously. But at this moment, it had yet to completely converge, and the surrounding golden light was shining, making it extremely difficult to see clearly. She suddenly remembered what Taizu had said previously. This rune that had inexplicably appeared in her body was actually a totem. But this should be used to test a person's bloodline talent, and she had nothing to do with this totem. Logically speaking, it shouldn't have appeared. That's Yu Er's bloodline totem. 36 respected Elder Ming was still in deep shock, and when he saw the pattern that gradually appeared under the bright light, he couldn't help but exclaim. He suddenly looked at Rong Xiao. That girl was indeed an outsider, and he was very clear about this. But now, what exactly was going on? Rong Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, and his eyebrows moved slightly. A streak of golden light, like a flame, flashed across his deep eyes. Looking at the totem that was gradually perfecting, Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a trace of uneasiness in her heart. This was the biggest secret hidden in her body. Even though she still didn't know the origin of this totem, if it was seen by others, this was the divine ruins world. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue made a prompt decision. She started to rapidly withdraw her force. But it was easy to release this surging majestic force, but it was difficult to withdraw it again. Thus, the needle continued to move at a slow but steady speed towards the next number. At the same time, the totem on the infinite divine dial was also becoming more and more complete. A faint, vast aura spread out from it. Chu Luiyue clenched her teeth and withdrew the rest of her force. Stop! Both sides were in a deadlock. The needle started to shake violently. Just at this moment, under the bright golden light, a powerful aura suddenly surged out. It appeared extremely quickly. It directly and straightforwardly wrapped around the tip of the needle. Then, that ball of light suddenly dispersed. The needle finally stopped shaking and steadily stopped at the 11th position. A bit of black light quietly dissipated. Chapter 1088. Between heaven and earth, everything was dark. Only the everlasting divine dial shone brightly, divine and dazzling. A gentle breeze blew, and Chu Liuyue's sleeves fluttered. As she watched the incomplete pattern on the infinite divine dial disappear with a loud bang, the stone in her heart finally fell to the ground. Whew! Thank goodness! Thank goodness! She managed to stop it at the very last moment. Chu Liyue rejoiced inwardly. Just a little more, and the needle would have reached 12. It was fortunate that she managed to save it in time. If the crowd below knew what she was thinking, they would probably vomit blood. Everyone was fighting to make the needle move 2 more times, but she was afraid that it would continue to move, so she stopped it. Chu Liyue retracted her hand. The light on the infinite divine dial gradually dimmed. Then, under countless shocked gazes, the infinite divine dial gradually disappeared into the void. At the top of the mountain, only the light of the lantern illuminated the woman's figure. Straight, slender, and graceful. She turned around and leaped onto the bridge formed by the golden light. Her footsteps were elegant, and her figure was light. In the blink of an eye, she was back in the ethereal hall. She jumped down from the bridge. Rongxiu waved his sleeves, and the golden light dissipated into countless stars. In the darkness, the woman seemed to have walked out of the endless light. She walked up to Rongxiu and smiled. How is it? Are you satisfied with this result? Rongxiu looked at her with deep eyes. His thin lips curled up slightly as he smiled. Yue is always the best. Chu Liuyue's eyes curved into crescents, but she soon realized that the surroundings were completely silent. She was stunned for a moment. She looked at the crowd and blinked her eyes in confusion, only to see them looking at her with shocked expressions. Were they stunned by that 11? Chu Liyue pondered. However, at this moment, Lin Tianfeng suddenly muttered, "That's right. Miss Dugu, your face." Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately touched her face. Smooth and delicate. It was her own face. Chu Liyue widened her eyes slightly and looked at Rongxiu, only to see Rongxiu holding back his laughter and saying gently, "Don't you feel uncomfortable wearing that mask?" As expected, the mask had fallen off. What Chu Liyue didn't know was that when the needle of the everlasting divine dial pointed to 10, the mask on her face had already silently disappeared. It was just that she had placed all her attention on the everlasting divine dial at that time, so she didn't notice this. Under such circumstances, Chu Liyue suddenly dropped his mask. For a moment, he felt a little awkward. Cough. Chu Liyue coughed to cover it up. It's all right. During this period of time, she had been showing her face to others, so she had gotten used to it. Rongxiu reached out and tidied up her messy hair that was blown by the mountain wind. His actions were rare and gentle. He looked at her as if he was looking at a rare treasure, and treated her with extreme care. After a short moment of silence, the crowd finally broke out into whispers. So this is Duguyu's true appearance. Otherworldly and elegant. Truly a beauty capable of toppling cities. I originally thought that Miss Jiang was already beautiful enough, but compared to her, Miss Jiang seems to have instantly become much duller. With such an appearance, no wonder His Highness the Holy Sun is so fond of her. Furthermore, her bloodline talent is also so high. After regaining their senses, many people exclaimed. Jiang Jiwon stared blankly at the two people standing side by side not far away. When she saw that Duguyu's bloodline had surpassed hers, her heart had already turned cold. At that time, the only consolation she could give herself was that although Duguyu was outstanding in other aspects, she had an ordinary face. At least in this aspect, she had won against Duguyu. But now, she knew that she was gravely mistaken. Dugayu. So this is what she looks like. She was wearing an ordinary red dress, and her hair was tied up simply. She did not wear any makeup, but she seemed to be more beautiful than the myriad of sceneries in the world. When she stood there, everything around her seemed to be overshadowed in an instant. Countless golden light spots dissipated behind her, illuminating her snow-white jade-like face. A pair of jade-like eyes seemed to ripple like water, and countless stars seemed to be hidden in them. She smiled, and her eyes curved into crescents. This was probably what it meant to be a beauty capable of toppling countries. Although she did not want to admit it, Jiang Jiwon knew that compared to her, she was indeed inferior. Since young, she had been the most outstanding in all aspects. Everything was the best. This was the first time she had been so thoroughly defeated by another girl. This blow came so quickly that she was a little dazed for a moment. For a moment, she even felt a bit of regret. She should not have come. From the beginning to the end, this banquet was just specially organized by Rong Xiu for her. He had put in so much effort for her, and he had done everything he could for her. Even though he knew that there would be countless objections if he allowed this girl to become the consort, he still did it. As for her, from the beginning to the end, he had not even spared her a single glance. She was nothing more than a joke. Rong Xiu helped Chu Lua tidy up her hair and clothes, and his gaze lingered on her face for a moment. In truth, it had been a long time since he last saw her face. Chapter 1089. Many people in the Yuntian Tower in the Empire of Yaoqin had heard of this place. This was because Rong Xiu's mother had secretly married the emperor of the Empire of Yaoqin. Everyone in the Yuntian Tower knew that he was the seventh prince of the Empire of Yaoqin. These things had already spread like wildfire when they found Rong Xiu. Almost everyone knew about it. It was also because of this that Rong Xiu had always been regarded as a disgrace to the clan. If not for the fact that the infinite divine dial had automatically appeared in front of the sacrificial god temple and detected his astonishing talent and bloodline, he might have already been killed in front of all the ancestral tablets of the Yuntian K sect. Over the years, as Rong Xiu's cultivation improved, his authority in the Yuntian Tower also increased. Gradually, everyone stopped mentioning this matter. This time, it was Rong Xiu's first time mentioning it. His goal was self-evident, to secure the position of Chu Liuyu as princess consort. Elder Yu Jingzuan and the others were shocked at first. Then, they looked at each other and frowned. According to His Highness, this Dugu. No, this Shengwan Yu really had an ordinary background. But how could they explain the infinite divine dial's reaction? There had never been such a situation before. Your Highness, Miss Shengwan is an outsider, but she was tested to be ranked 11 and has an extremely powerful bloodline talent. It's really strange, from a certain perspective, I can be considered an outsider, but didn't I also test to be ranked 11? You revered elders have repeatedly brought up this point. Could it be that you also have the same attitude towards this lord's identity? Rong Xiu interrupted Elder Yu Jingzuan's words and said calmly. I wouldn't dare. Elder Yu Jingzuan's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately denied it. Even if that was what they were thinking, how could they say it out loud? Besides, Rong Xiu, an outsider, had the best bloodline talent of the Yuntian Tower in the past thousands of years. They had no choice but to accept this. 36 Revered Elder Ming smiled and said, Little Yu, from today onwards, you are the Holy Sun's princess consort. Honored Elder Yu Jing wanted to say something but hesitated. Honored Elder Qing Qin gave him a meaningful glance. 36 Revered Elder Ming had a noble status and was the most senior among the revered elders. Even if Revered Elder Tong Chuan was here, he would have to give him some face. What about the others? As soon as he opened his mouth, the people around him were left with no room for rebuttal. They had made it clear that they were going to do this today. Whoever disagreed would be publicly going against the saint and 36 revered Elder Ming. He really couldn't act rashly. Elder Yu Jingzuan took a deep breath and swallowed the rest of his words. Elder Pure Dust was able to control his expression quite well. He bowed slightly. "Greetings, Your Highness." Seeing that he was already like this, honored Elder Yu Jing and honored Elder Shi Kaiyan could only follow. "Greetings, Your Highness." The people around them were still a little stunned. It settled just like that. Even the revered elders have publicly acknowledged this person's identity. Then, "Congratulations to His Highness and Your Highness." A voice suddenly came from the quiet crowd. It was Lin Qifei who took a step forward and bowed first. This voice finally caused everyone to react. Almost everyone spoke in unison and bowed respectfully. "Congratulations to His Highness and Your Highness." Chu Luiyue looked at Rongxiu. Just like that, it settled. It seemed a little too simple. Rongxiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, chuckled softly, and suddenly held her hand. Chu Luiyue wore an ancient universe ring on her hand. He gently brushed his fingertips over it. The upper layer suddenly faded, and a dazzling golden light shone brightly. Only then did Chu Luiyue see that the Yuntian Tower's totem was carved on the ring. She was slightly stunned and suddenly understood something. The holy ring. 36 revered Elder Ming stood nearby and saw the ring on her hand at a glance. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. When the crowd heard this, they all revealed a look of shock. The holy ring was actually on her hand. Rongxiu explained. The holy ring is the status symbol of the Yuntian Tower's holy sun. It is also a keepsake given to the concubines of the past. Chu Luiyue was stunned. "So, you gave it to me so early." Rongxiu chuckled softly. His eyes were gentle, but there was a noble and domineering aura that couldn't be disobeyed. "It's yours anyway. Why should it be early or late?" Jiang Jiwan turned and left. Jiang Hetian quickly chased after her. "Ziyuan! Ziyuan!" After a few steps, he suddenly stopped and looked back at Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue. His expression was extremely complicated. It seemed like he was angry, but also seemed to be resentful. "His Highness treats Miss Shangguan very well. It turns out that my immortal water tomb is not worthy of her. I will take my leave now. I hope that the two of you will also be treated well by the patriarch in the future. Grow old together." Who is he using the patriarch to threaten? Rongxiu's lips curved up into an elegant smile. "Patriarch Jiang, you don't have to worry about it. Thank you for your blessing." Jiang Hetian was so angry that he swung his sleeve and left. The remaining people of the immortal water tomb also hurriedly bowed and left. Many people secretly exchanged glances. The concubine position was taken by Shangguan Yu. The immortal water tomb wouldn't let it go so easily, especially since Jiang Jiwan was the patriarch's favorite concubine candidate. There would be more trouble in the future. However, Rongxiu didn't seem to care about this. He glanced at the sky. "It's getting late. Everyone should disperse. The wedding day will be decided later. I hope that everyone will come again at that time." After speaking, he looked at Chu Luiyue. It's been a long journey. Do you want to rest now?" Chu Luiyue paused and smiled. "Okay. But I haven't seen Your Highness for a long time. I miss you. I wonder if Your Highness has the time to catch up with me." Rongxiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. "Everything is up to you, Sacrificial God Temple. The Holy Sun's bedroom." Yan Qing and Umo were guarding outside the main hall. After a day and night of work, the two of them were actually very tired. But they didn't feel sleepy at all. Instead, they were especially alert and focused on guarding. From time to time, they would glance inside, afraid that something would happen. Even though he couldn't see or hear anything from where he was standing, he couldn't see or hear anything. After waiting for a while, Umo finally couldn't help but poke Yanqing and ask in a low voice, "Hey, it's been so long. Why hasn't there been any movement inside?" He originally thought that the concubine would at least make a scene with His Highness. After being kept in the dark for so long, who wouldn't be angry? Could it be that the concubine has finally been moved by His Highness's good intentions? So, Yanqing was speechless and looked at him in disdain. "If you don't need your brain, you can donate it." Umo was immediately unhappy. "Hey, why are you scolding me? Aren't I just thinking for His Highness and the concubine?" Yanqing turned around to take a look. "You should eat more vegetarian food and pray to Buddha to accumulate merit for your master." Chapter 1090. Inside the room. Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu sat facing each other. It was so quiet that even the air seemed to have frozen. There was only a subtle flow of air flowing back and forth between the two of them. Both of them had been silent since they came in. Chu Luiyue crossed her arms and looked up and down at the incomparably noble His Highness, the Holy Sun. Rongxiu, on the other hand, was holding a cup of tea in one hand, allowing the newly appointed princess consort to repeatedly examine him. In comparison, he was actually more at ease. After a while, Chu Luiyue finally moved forward and put her hands on the table. Her beautiful eyes were half squinted, with a hint of danger. "Your Highness, at this time, you still have the leisure to be so elegant. Drink tea." Rongxiu took a sip of tea and slowly looked up. His eyes were full of ease. There was a hint of a smile in the corner of his eyes. "After going through so much trouble to choose my favorite princess consort, I have already restrained myself by not celebrating for 3 days and 3 nights. Can't I have a cup of tea and be happy?" Chu Luiyue was speechless. Whether this man was in white or black, princely or the Holy Sun, they were all black-hearted. His skin was really thicker than the city walls. For a moment, Chu Luiyue didn't know how to refute him. She took a deep breath and kept saying in her heart, "After all, he's my man. I can't kill him, I can't kill him." She leaned back in her chair again and sneered. "Your Highness, if I didn't come here myself this time, how long were you planning to hide your identity?" Rongxiu thought about it carefully and still chose to defend himself. "Previously, when we were in Tianling, I actually mentioned it to you, but I didn't go into detail. It shouldn't be considered deliberately hiding it, right? It would have been better if he didn't mention this, but once he did, Chu Luiyue was furious. That counts as mentioning it. You didn't say that your mother's clan was actually a first-rate clan in the Divine Ruins world, Yuntian Tower. This wasn't an ordinary family background, yet he didn't mention it from the beginning to the end." Rongxiu pondered for a moment, but his tone and expression were much more serious. "At that time, it wasn't very appropriate to tell you these things. Furthermore, there were still some minor issues at the Yuntian Tower that had yet to be resolved. So I originally planned to wait for you to break through to the 9th stage before telling you in detail. I didn't expect." He smiled, and in an instant, all the colors in the world were taken away. His eyes were deep, as if they could make people unconsciously sink into them, unable to extricate themselves. "It's just that I didn't expect you to break through so quickly, and, furthermore, even the totem had awakened. This was much faster than he had expected. It should have been when she broke through to the 7th rank warrior and went through the ascension tribulation, which triggered all these." Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. In fact, from everything that had happened today, she could also see that Rongxiu's situation at the Yuntian Tower was indeed somewhat dangerous. Not to mention those people at the Immortal Water Tomb, just those few revered elders didn't seem to be on his side. If it weren't for 36 revered Elder Ming, who could restrain them, she was afraid, then let's forget about this matter for now. Now, let me ask you something else, you must answer honestly. Chu Luiyue said firmly. Rongxiu fumbled with the teacup, the bitter and slightly spicy taste of ginger tea still lingering between his lips and teeth. He nodded. Okay. Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment, and unconsciously sat up straight. She looked into the eyes of the man opposite her, and said word by word, "Who, exactly am I?" Digression, continue at 6 p.m. Chapter 1091. There was complete silence. Rongxiu paused for a moment and looked up at Chu Luiyue. "You're Sheng Guanyu, and also Chu Luiyue." Chu Luiyue frowned. "You know that's not what I'm asking. But these two are indeed your identities." Rongxiu replied, "You should be the one who knows who you are the best." Chu Luiyue felt suffocated. She paused. "Rongxiu, I've already remembered some things. You were the one who played chess with me in the octagonal pavilion. You were the one who deliberately drank my ginger tea. You were also the one who made a lifelong promise with me." Chu Luiyue looked at him. Every time she said a word, the scene of the past would appear in her mind. Most of it was fragmented and blurry, but these few fragments were very clear. "You knew that I lost part of my memory a long time ago, but you never took the initiative to mention it to me. And in the past that disappeared, the only thing I remember was you." This was enough to explain too many things. "We clearly knew each other a long time ago. I even said that I was going to go back and announce our marriage to Imperial Father. But, what happened after that?" She didn't remember where they first met, and she didn't know what happened after that promise. After she returned to the Tianling dynasty, she was actually engaged to Jiang Yuqing, and so many things happened after that. She used to think that she liked Jiang Yuqing, but later she met Rongxiu, she realized that she didn't like him. At most, she didn't hate him based on various factors. When she learned that Jiang Yuqing and Sheng Guanwan had teamed up, she was more angry and heartbroken at being betrayed by someone she trusted. Thinking about it carefully, she didn't seem to care that much about the fact that they were secretly together. It was just that at that time, she was hurt by a traitor and was momentarily blinded by anger. All she thought about was revenge. She hadn't noticed it before, but now that she recalled some things, she found a lot of things wrong. Since she and Rongxiu were already together, and even promised to go back and tell Imperial Father about this matter, it was impossible for her to be engaged to other people. Did something happen after she returned to Tianling? Rongxiu looked at her with a deep gaze and sighed. It was as if he was happy, but at the same time, it was as if he was feeling pity for her. "So you've remembered so much." No wonder the totem. He was silent for a while. Then, as if he had made an important decision, he said, "We have indeed known each other since 3 years ago." Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. 3 years ago. It had been a year and a half since her rebirth, and 2.5 years since her death. If they had met 3 years ago, in other words, they knew each other at least half a year before she died. As if he had guessed what Chu Luiyue was thinking, Rongxiu smiled and shook his head. "Actually, it's a little longer than you think. Later, you said you wanted to go back, so we separated. But a few months after that, something happened to you. You know what happened after that?" The blood in Chu Luiyue's eardrums was gurgling, and it hurt. It was as if an invisible hand had suddenly clenched her heart, making it difficult for her to breathe. Her throat was tight as she asked with difficulty. "So, my rebirth in Empire Yao Qin is also related to you?" She was lucky to be reborn in Chu Luiyue's body in Empire Yao Qin. Moreover, she happened to meet Rongxiu that day. There were too many coincidences, so it was impossible for people to doubt it. Rongxiu rubbed his finger gently on the teacup when he heard this. The room was silent. Every minute and every second was incomparably torturous. Just when Chu Luiyue thought that Rongxiu wouldn't answer, he finally spoke. Yes. I purposely waited there for your return. Why haven't the two of them come out yet? I don't know what they are talking about. They actually chatted for so long. 36 Respected Elder Ming came to the sacrificial god hall after dealing with some trivial matters after the concubine selection ceremony. He saw Yan Qing and Yumo guarding the door from afar, and he couldn't help but ask curiously. Greetings to 36 Respected Elder Ming. The two of them bowed respectfully. 36 Respected Elder Ming waved his hand and raised his chin, unable to hide the curiosity in his eyes. How is it? This. Respected Elder, you also know that there are Xian formations and barriers around the sacrificial god hole. If His Highness doesn't want us to hear or see it, he naturally has a way. We also don't know what's going on inside. Yumo answered carefully as he looked at the sky that was already turning white. Most of the night had passed, and the sky was already bright. But since the person inside didn't come out, they didn't dare to disturb her. Lass. Princess Consort has been rushing all the way here. It must be very tiring. She might be resting inside. 36 Respected Elder Ming stroked his beard and was very understanding. Glancing from the corner of his eyes, his movements suddenly paused. That's the child who came with Princess Consort. He pointed to a small purple figure sitting on a jade stool and asked. Yes. He's been here since yesterday, until now. Speaking of this child, Umo and Yan Qing also had a headache. Yesterday, when His Highness and Princess Consort returned, this child had been by Princess Consort's side. After that, Princess Consort said that she wanted to have a private chat with His Highness, so she left this child behind. Originally, they had specially arranged a room for him to rest, but no matter how they persuaded him, he was indifferent and just sat there. They thought that it wasn't a big deal for a child to be a little stubborn. At most, they would wait for him to fall asleep before sending him into the room. In the end, I've answered some of her doubts and let her breathe a sigh of relief. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully now. It was not that he did not want to tell her all the facts, but now was not the best time. You know that even if I tell her everything now, it will only add to her worries. Dugu Mabao did not reply. Of course, he knew what Rongxiu meant. If he did not think so, he would not have needed to look for Rongxiu. He would have told Chu Luyue everything on the way here. Rongxiu paused and said. Everything will be clear when she breaks through to the god level again. Chapter 1093. Chu Luyue had a very long dream. In the dream, she was in a strange place. She met a group of strange people and did many strange things. The strangest thing was that she actually dreamed that she was trying to break through to the god realm. Boom! A heavenly tribulation descended. Intense pain spread throughout her body. Chu Luyue suddenly opened her eyes and woke up. She panted, her heart thumped, and boiling blood flowed through her limbs and bones. The pain seemed to still be lingering. Chu Luyue subconsciously looked at her surroundings. She was lying on the bed, covered with a cloud brocade quilt, unharmed. However, the feeling of being enveloped by the heavenly tribulation in her dream was too realistic, as if she had really experienced it before. Chu Luyue took a deep breath, and a familiar faint fragrance filled the air. It was Rongxiu's aura. Right, she was now in Rongxiu's bedroom in the sacrificial god temple. Last night, the two of them talked a lot about the part of her memories that she had lost, about their past. They had indeed known each other for a long time, but it was not in Yaoqin or Tianling, but in the divine ruins world. Rongxiu made it clear that the first time they met, as well as the things that happened afterward, actually happened in the divine ruins. He only found out later that she was not from the divine ruins world, but from the Tianling dynasty. And after that, something happened to her. Later, Rongxiu felt that something was wrong. He tried his best to find a way to let her reincarnate into Chu Liyue's body and wait for her to wake up. However, because she was too decisive before she died and chose to die with the Tianjin Yuan meridian, her soul was scattered after she died, and he could only find a part of it. As a result, her soul was incomplete and she lost a part of her memories. Unfortunately, it was the part of the memory between them. Chu Liyue rubbed the space between her eyebrows. After a night of rest, she finally regained her energy. After spending some time to sort out yesterday's events, she seemed to have sobered up a lot, but she also had a lot of new questions. This was because she had no idea how she had managed to get to the Divine Ruins world from Tianling. Rong Xiu didn't seem to be very clear about this part. Because not long after he found out that she came from Tianling, she went back, and he didn't have time to ask. Chu Liyue walked to the table and poured himself a cup of tea. Smoke lingered in the air, and the air was steaming. It seemed to be freshly brewed. Chu Liyue's movements paused as a deep thought flashed through his eyes. In fact, last night, she had tried to ask Rong Xiu if he knew anything about the Black Pyramid. Rong Xiu seemed to know nothing about this. Chu Liyue had always suspected that the black-clothed man was Rong Xiu, but now she was a little shaken. On one hand, the black-clothed man had sealed a part of her soul. If Rong Xiu was really him, then he should be busy helping her find a complete soul to recover her memories. On the other hand, in the fragmented memories she recalled, there were two figures that were very clear. One was Rong Xiu, and the other was the black-clothed man. But from what she knew, Rong Xiu and him were indeed two different people. And Rong Xiu didn't seem to know much about that person. As for the truth, perhaps she would have to wait until she remembered everything before she could understand. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue held her breath and focused. There were already 3 cracks on the black pyramid that was quietly floating in her dantian. A golden light faintly seeped out from within. Her fragmented memories should have flowed out from here. It would be great if she could open it. Chu Liyue gathered her force and prepared to hit it again. Creak, the door suddenly opened. Chu Liyue paused in her actions and looked up. Rong Xiu walked in. "You're up. Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Chu Liyue nodded. "I've rested enough." Sensing the force surging in her body, Rong Xiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. "What were you thinking about just now?" "I was thinking about how to recover my past memories," Chu Liyue said honestly. Rong Xiu felt an inexplicable pain in a certain part of his body. He clenched his fist and coughed. "This matter can't be rushed. Anyway, I've already remembered some of it, and I'll naturally remember it in the future." Chu Liyue nodded. That was all she could do now. "Your priority now is to improve your cultivation as soon as possible." A cold and cute voice suddenly came from the door. Chu Liyue looked over and saw a purple figure. Debao, you're here too." Dugu Mabao's face instantly darkened. Rong Xiu kindly reminded her. "Ahem, we came in together." Unfortunately, because of her small body, she was completely blocked by Rong Xiu's figure in front of her, so Chu Liyue did not see her. Chu Liyue was speechless. Dugu Mabao said word by word. "From today onwards, you'll play chess with me for 4 hours every day." "No!" Chu Liyue screamed and hugged her head in pain. 4 hours was not considered long for a chess game. After all, sometimes a chess game could drag on for even longer. However, she was playing chess with Dugu Mabao. Chu Liyue recalled the night when she was dominated by Dugu Mabao's terrifying chess skills. Until now, she had not been able to last more than 15 minutes. Every time, she would be killed after a short while. Most importantly, it was the most miserable kind. 4 hours. She did not know what kind of torture she would be subjected to. In addition, for 2 hours every day, the puppet I made will spar with you. Dugu Mabao narrowed its eyes. Its originally watery and devilish eyes were now flashing with a murderous glint. Chu Liu's Since you're still at the beginner stage of the 7th stage, I'll start with the misunderstanding about the beginner stage of the 7th stage. Chu Liu's eyes twitched, and she struggled to ask. I'm at the beginner stage of the 7th stage, and you want me to spar with the beginner stage of the 8th stage, isn't this a little? Then let's start with the intermediate stage of the 8th stage. We'll do as you said at the beginning. Chu Liu's strong desire to live made her react quickly. Based on her understanding of Dugu Mabao, he would definitely do what he said. As long as she was still alive, he would not go easy on her. Dugu Mabao glanced at her, as if he had seen through her thoughts, and said directly, I'll only give you 10 days. After 10 days, you'll be at the intermediate stage of the 8th stage. Chu Liu. Debao, I was wrong, this is the Yuntian Tower. The density of the force of heaven and earth is enough to speed up your cultivation by several times. Moreover, you've recovered your Tianjing Yuan meridian, so it should be even more so. Dugu Mabao frowned as he spoke, and his eyes were filled with disdain. You've been at the beginner stage of the 7th stage for too long. Chu Liu. Chapter 1094. How does it feel to have a powerful senior personally and carefully teaching you? Chu Liu finally understood. It was simply purgatory on earth. She used to think that she was diligent enough in her cultivation, but after meeting Dugu Mabao, she knew that she was wrong. According to him, the weak should have the self-awareness of the weak. Anyway, the consort selection ceremony was over, and the matters here had come to an end for the time being. It was time to cultivate properly. Chu Liu tried to defend herself. Actually, I shouldn't be that bad, right? Yesterday, I even measured 11 on the infinite divine dial. Dugu Mabao seemed unmoved and looked up lazily. So what? Aren't you still a mere rank 7 warrior? Chu Liu felt that she had been dealt a heavy blow again. Suddenly, she thought of something and looked up at the two people in front of her. By the way, there's something I forgot to ask before. Your Highness' chessboard seems to be similar to Debao's. Dugu Mabao and Rong Xiu both fell silent. After a moment, Dugu Mabao said, Pack up first, I'll come back in 15 minutes. With that, he put his hands behind his back and walked away with his head held high. But for some reason, Chu Liu felt that his back view was inexplicably guilty. She glanced at Rong Xiu from the corner of her eye. Rong Xiu said warmly, Senior is powerful, and it's a rare opportunity to cultivate with him. You, must cherish it. I won't disturb you. With that, he also planned to turn around and leave. Wait! Chu Liu suddenly called out to him. Have the people of the various tribes left? Rong Xiu turned around. Some have already left, but a small number are still here. As if guessing what she wanted to ask, Rong Xiu added, The people of Cave Heaven Cliff are still here. Chu Liu was relieved. That's good. I promised to treat Lin Qifei's illness. The Lin family head has treated me well, so I can't go back on my word. She looked at Rong Xiu. I wonder if you can ask them to stay here for a few days and let them leave after Lin Qifei's body recovers. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Actually, there are a few celestial physicians in the Yuntian Tower, and they are quite strong. Chu Liu thought for a moment and shook his head. Since we've already agreed to it, it's naturally not good to go back on our words. Moreover, the main problem with his body had already been solved. He only needed to recuperate for a few more days. It wouldn't take much effort. Rong Xiu paused and suddenly took a step forward. He pinched her chin with one hand and leaned over to kiss her. She was sitting while he was standing, so there was a height difference. Suddenly bending down like this, a strong sense of oppression attacked. Before Chu Liu could react, she was surrounded by the familiar cold fragrance on his body. The next moment, her lips were slightly cold, but quickly turned hot. Duke Mabao placed a piece first and said in a vague manner, "The faster you break through, the stronger you become, and the more you will know." Chu Luiyue nodded and placed a piece as well. "I know." After Rong Xiao came out of the bedroom, he went straight to the study. It had only been a day, but there were many booklets on the table. It was obvious that most of them were related to Chu Luiyue being chosen as the princess consort. Of course, because Chu Luiyue was chosen openly, they did not have any serious reasons to refute, except for her birth. Although Chu Luiyue's level 11 on the infinite divine dial was already tested, in the eyes of some people, this was far from enough. Rong Xiao casually opened the booklets and dismissed them all. Clearly, he did not intend to pay attention to them. Since his title was already confirmed, no matter what they did, they would not cause any trouble. When Rong Xiao finished dealing with the last booklet, a strong aura suddenly came from the outside at high speed. Rong Xiao's eyes flickered as he looked up. The door of the study was wide open. The next moment, a figure appeared at the door. It was Elder Tong Chuan. Rong Xiao smiled and said casually, "Elder Tong Chuan, why are you back so soon?" Elder Tong Chuan's face was filled with unconcealable anger. He strode in and said angrily, "So your highness purposely sent me away to choose that unknown Sheng Wanyu as the princess consort." Chapter 1095. The smile on Rong Xiao's face faded and a layer of frost covered his eyes. "Respected Elder Tongchuan, please watch your words. You, is now the princess consort of Yuntian Tower and you cannot insult her so casually." Insult. Respected Elder Tongchuan also had a stomach full of anger. Only the heavens knew how angry he was when he heard this news and understood the cause and effect of this matter. Is there anything wrong with this old man's words? Isn't her origin unknown? On the surface, she says that she is an outsider, but she clearly has an extremely tyrannical bloodline talent in her body. Until now, no one knows what her identity is. In addition, she has also contracted with 2 spiritual beasts. This does not conform to common sense. If your highness said that there is nothing fishy about her, would you believe it yourself? In any case, there are too many suspicious points about this woman and she really cannot bear the responsibility of being the princess consort. Rong Xiao's expression was indifferent as he leaned back on the chair and crossed his arms in front of him. Respected Elder Tongchuan, you came back today just to criticize I and the princess consort. If not for your highness's improper actions, this old man would not have to do this. Respected Elder Tongchuan's face was full of anger. Not only this old man, your highness had also sent the other respected elders out for various reasons. It was all to set up this situation in advance. Isn't that right? Your highness is like this for a woman, it really makes my heart cold. Actually, this matter was very simple. At the start, Rong Xiao had accepted the Ming tribe's opinion and agreed to hold the princess consort selection ceremony and had requested for all the tribes to gather. To anyone who heard this, they would think that he was going to hold a proper princess consort selection. According to this process, the final result should be Immortal Water Tomb's Jiang Ji1. If he was willing, he could also choose a concubine and so on. Thus, including respected Elder Tongchuan and the rest, no one thought too much about it. Even when the respected elders were sent out before the princess consort selection ceremony, they also did not think about it. Who would have thought that Rong Xiao had actually decided to choose that Sheng Wanyu from the start? Immortal Water Tomb is the head of the 28 tribes and has been loyal to the Yuntian Tower for thousands of years. Eldest Miss Jiang is deeply loved by the tribe leader and is already the most suitable candidate for the princess consort. Your highness has never thought that your actions will undoubtedly cause the Immortal Water Tomb's reputation. Eldest Miss Jiang also, this is I's princess consort selection, not you. Rong Xiao interrupted him in a seemingly smiling manner, but there was no happiness in his eyes. In the end, the tomb of immortal water is only one of the 28 tribes. Chapter 1096. Elder Tong Chuan, you don't have to worry about that. Rong Xiu chuckled. If you are really upset about this, why don't you spend some time comforting Lord Jiang and Lady Jiang at the Immortal Water Mausoleum? After all, you have always been on good terms with them. Tong Chuan's heart skipped a beat as he panicked. He quickly glanced at Rong Xiu. Did Rong Xiu know something? However, there was only a faint smile on Rong Xiu's elegant and devilish face. His eyes were deep, and nothing could be seen. The Son of God was getting more and more ruthless, and his thoughts were getting more and more unpredictable. Elder Tong Chuan felt troubled. He took a deep breath and gave himself a way out. That won't be necessary. I am the elder of Yuntian Tower. I should keep my distance from the other tribes. How can I do such a thing? I am here today for the sake of His Highness and the entire Yuntian Tower. If I have offended you, I hope His Highness can forgive me. Rong Xiu didn't seem to mind. He smiled and nodded. Of course. Lord Tong Chuan has been loyal to the Yuntian Tower for many years. How can I be unhappy with you over such a small matter? That's good, that's good. Tong Chuan's voice became softer. For some reason, Rong Xiu looked normal, but he was getting more and more agitated. After a few more words, he hurriedly left. Looking at his back, Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes and curled his lips in disappointment. Truly. Unable to withstand a single blow, he had only vaguely mentioned it, yet he was already so flustered. It was rare to be able to be arrogant in the Yuntian Tower for so many years. Thinking about the academy, Rong Xiu's eyes darkened. He picked up his pen and wrote a letter. Chu Luiyue was unaware of the infighting in the outside world. She was playing chess with Dugu Maobao. Pa! Dugu Maobao waved his finger and placed a piece on the chessboard. Chu Luiyue, lost. Bam! The chessboard disappeared. Chu Luiyue rubbed her face. I lost again. Dugu Maobao's expression was calm. You've improved a little, but it's still not enough. Chu Luiyue gave him a sad look. An extra 5 steps is considered an improvement. In these 4 hours, she couldn't even remember how many times she had lost. And after all this was over, her only improvement was that she could take 5 more pitiful steps. Moreover, it was only that one time. Rong Xiu should have played chess with you before, right? How many steps can he take under your hands? Chu Liuyue's. Dugu Maobao looked up slightly and glanced at her. Can't. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Was there a need to ask? Of course, she knew that Dugu Maobao was stronger than her. Even though Dugu Maobao defeated her by half a move in the consort selection ceremony, she knew that he hadn't shown his true strength. Thinking about how she hadn't won against him properly even once, Chu Luiyue felt very unhappy. Then let's continue. Dugu Maobao shook his head. It's time to practice something else. If you want to continue, you can wait until tomorrow. Chu Luiyue suddenly remembered that Dugu Maobao had asked her to set aside 4 hours to practice with the puppet he made. She looked around. It doesn't seem appropriate here, does it? Dugu Maobao jumped down and walked outside. The sacrificial god temple is huge, where can't we practice? After Chu Luiyue came out, she realized that she was worrying too much. Dugu Maobao seemed to have made arrangements, and Yan Qing led them to the training field at the back of the temple. On the way, Chu Luiyue didn't see anyone else other than those soldiers in black armor. She didn't feel it when she came up last night, but now, she realized that the sacrificial god temple's security was extremely strict. Those who were chosen to stay here were naturally very strong and well-trained soldiers. Chu Luiyue noticed that most of them had the smell of blood on them. Obviously, these were people who had experienced life and death battles. Chu Liuyue's understanding of the Yuntian Tower increased. The first-rate clan of the Divine Ruins was indeed not to be underestimated. The training field covered a large area, and the ground was paved with black jade. A huge Yuntian Tower totem could be vaguely seen in the middle. Strangely, there was no one guarding here. Other than the three of them, there was no one else. It was even more deserted than outside. Yan Qing explained, "Princess Consort, this is His Highness martial arts training ground. Usually, only His Highness comes here. Without His Highness's permission, no one else is allowed to enter." Chu Luyue nodded in understanding. "And it was specially used. His Highness has already ordered that you two can come and go as you please. If you need anything, just tell me." Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows and teased, "Only here. Can we get out of the sacrificial god temple?" Yan Qing's iceberg face cracked for a moment, but soon returned to normal. "You are wearing the holy ring on your hand, and now your status in the Yuntian Tower is almost the same as the Holy Sun. Naturally, you can go wherever you want." This sounded good. "You can go down first," Dugu Mabao said. These words were directed at Yan Qing. Yan Qing bowed respectfully, "Yes. This subordinate is waiting outside." After saying that, she quickly retreated without hesitation. "Looks like Yan Qing and the rest know you too." Chu Luyue looked back. Yan Qing had already left, and the door was closed. Dugu Mabao did not reply and only raised his chin. "Now, you can go up." Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows, tipped her toes, and jumped to the center of the training field. "Let's begin." Dugu Mabao waved his wrist, and a purple light flew out. Bang! In the next moment, a tall figure appeared in front of Chu Luyue. This was a bronze puppet. It was unknown what material was used to make it, but it looked neither gold nor jade. Under the sunlight, it had a faint luster. Chu Luyue already had experience. She knew that although this puppet looked stiff, it was actually very agile. Other than not being able to use force, it was almost no different from a real person. Swish! A purple light flashed across the puppet's eyes. In the next moment, it took the initiative to attack. It went straight for Chu Luyue. In an instant, it was in front of him. Chu Luyue was shocked. So fast. It was indeed an early stage ranked 8. The bronze puppet punched out, aiming directly at Chu Luyue's face. Chu Luyue raised his arm to block. Bang! A dull sound of collision was heard. A wave of pain came. But it was much better than what Chu Luyue had expected. Although you are only an early stage ranked 7, you have benefited from going through the God's tribulation. Your physical strength and other aspects have been greatly enhanced. Your real strength is actually at the peak of rank 7. Dugu Mabao's voice was heard. His eyes swept across Chu Luyue's face. Looks like it won't take 10 days. Let's change it to 5 days. Well, although De Bao was strong, it was obvious that he was not completely without worries. She rested on the spot for a while, then sat cross-legged, closed her eyes, and adjusted her breathing. At the same time, she kept replaying the scene of her battle with the puppet. This kind of puppet could not use the force of heaven and earth, so its melee combat strength was extremely strong. Whether it was strength, agility, or other aspects, it was stronger than a real cultivator of the same level. And its moves were also extremely ruthless and accurate. Chu Luyue went through all the details of the fight in her mind and carefully comprehended it. She only opened her eyes after she had completely understood it. It was already afternoon. Chu Luyue thought for a while, then walked to the door. Yan Qing was waiting. "Greetings, Princess," Chu Luyue asked. "Where are those people from Heavenly Cave Cliff now?" Lin Tianfeng and the others were still living in the same place as before. Previously, Yan Qing had said that she could let them move to a better place, but Lin Tianfeng had declined. Lin Tianfeng knew very well that all the benefits they enjoyed after coming to Yuntian Tower were actually thanks to Chu Luiyue. She might not mind, but Lin Tianfeng did not want that. If it were not for Lin Qifei's body not yet fully recovered, they might have left long ago. Lin Tianfeng's only request was to be able to see Chu Luiyue again and ask her to help cure Lin Qifei's illness completely. But he was not sure. Although they got along well with Chu Luiyue before, she was now the princess of Yuntian Tower, and her status was different from before. Therefore, Lin Tianfeng's heart was full of uneasiness, and he could only look out the door from time to time, hoping to see that familiar figure again. However, their behavior was very laughable in the eyes of the people living with them in Cold Mountain Valley. "Oh, Master Lin, you're very lucky this time." Han Quan stood across from him and said somewhat cynically. Lin Tianfeng ignored him. Han Quan sneered. "We're already packing up and getting ready to leave." "Why, Master Lin, you're not leaving?" "That's right, it wasn't easy to find someone to rely on. If it were me, of course I wouldn't be willing to leave." Han Quan said sourly. It was impossible to say that he did not envy Lin Tianfeng and the others. Originally, Cave Heaven Cliff was a little worse than Cold Mountain Valley, but now, because they happened to meet Shang Guanyu, their situation was completely different. Although there was a lot of controversy about the position of Shang Guanyu's princess, it was an existence that they could only dream of but not reach. Who wouldn't be jealous that Cave Heaven Cliff could climb such a high branch? But if you ask me, she's already a princess now, so why would she care about you? Lin family head, are you really going to stay here like this? Lin Tianfeng frowned. Chapter 1098. Chu Luiyue followed Lin Tianfeng into the room. Upon hearing the commotion, Lin Qifei came out to welcome her. Paying respects to Her Highness. Lin Qifei bowed respectfully. Even though it had only been a day, the identity of the woman before him had already undergone a tremendous change. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. "Fourth young Master Lin, there's no need to stand on ceremony. I promised to treat you, so naturally, I won't go back on my words. Please take a seat." Only then did Lin Qifei sit down. Chu Luiyue took his pulse and pondered for a moment. "Your body has already recovered by 60%. You should be able to make a full recovery in just a few more days." "Thank you, Her Highness." At the side, Lin Tianfeng could not suppress his excitement and said gratefully. In the past, Chu Luiyue was willing to help them because she wanted to obtain their help. But now, despite her astounding identity, she was still willing to help them. This was on a completely different level. Naturally, Lin Tianfeng was moved by her words. Lin Qifei smiled, and there was a trace of ripples in his clear eyes. "Actually, the main problem has already been resolved. You can just leave the rest to the other celestial physician." "There's no need for Her Highness to go to such lengths, other celestial physician." Chu Luiyue released her hand, raised her brows, and laughed. "Elder Lu Ruhai." The room immediately fell silent. There was no one else in the room other than the four of them, so there wasn't much apprehension between them. Lin Tianfeng frowned. "He did offend Her Highness several times in the past, and I didn't expect him to say such words in front of everyone in the ethereal hall. To publicly accuse Chu Luiyue of being an outsider, wasn't he trying to make things difficult for her? If not for Rong Xiao and 36 respected Elder Ming's protection, as well as Chu Luiyue's outstanding performance, who knew what would have happened?" Chu Luiyue walked to the side and wrote down a prescription. As he wrote, he said, "Lu Ruhai and I have no grudge against each other, but he is targeting me so boldly and arrogantly. Don't you find it strange at all, Master Lin?" Lin Tianfeng's expression changed. "Princess consort, you mean, if he's only making things difficult for me because I cured Lin Qifei and did what he couldn't do, then he's too petty. However, no matter what, he's still a 9-star pinnacle celestial physician. All he has to do is use some means to punish me. Why must he bring this matter to the ethereal hall? Chu Luiyue put down the pen and carefully reviewed the prescription before handing it over to Yan Qing. Please get me some medicine. Yan Qing took it with both hands, responded respectfully, and left quickly. This was the Yuntian Tower, and Chu Luiyue was the newly appointed princess consort. No one dared to do anything to her. Thus, Yan Qing wasn't worried at all. She quickly went to get the medicine. Lin Tianfeng wasn't a fool. He immediately understood what Chu Luiyue was trying to say. Princess consort, you're saying that someone instigated Lu Ruhai to do this. Suddenly, his expression changed. The person who did this had to be related to them and had the ability to do so. After thinking about it, there was only one person who could do it. It's Lu Yue. He muttered in disbelief. Chu Luiyue chuckled. It seems like Master Lin is still clear-headed. Lin Tianhai's face turned green and red. How can that be? Lu Ruhai has been loyal to our Lin clan for decades, and Yue has only been here for a short while. Fourth young master has been ill for as long as she has been in the Lin clan. Chu Luiyue said meaningfully. Lin Tianfeng was shocked. Chu Luiyue's words contained too much information. Could it be that Qifei's illness was caused by her? He looked back at Lin Qifei, only to see that his expression was calm and indifferent, as if he wasn't shocked at all. Lin Qifei had known about it for a long time. Lin Tianfeng felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Master Lin, please don't misunderstand. Fourth young master was indeed born with this illness, and it wasn't inflicted on him by someone else. Of course, his illness in his mother's womb was benefited by someone else. Chu Luiyue said calmly. In just a few words, he had revealed the Lin clan's huge secret that had been hidden for many years. Lin Tianfeng trembled, his face pale, and he couldn't speak. Father, don't worry. Your son's body has recovered. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. Lin Qifei explained. But you can rest assured now. Lin Tianfeng took a while to process this. Then Lu Ruhai has been saying that he can't cure you all these years. Could it be that he was also pretending? That wasn't a pretense. Lin Qifei smiled faintly. He really doesn't have the ability. If he hadn't met Chu Luiyue, he wouldn't have thought that he would have a chance to turn things around. He didn't say it before because he had many concerns. But now, Chu Luiyue was the princess of Yuntian Tower, and Lu Ruhai had dug his own grave and made such a big trouble for himself. He might as well take the opportunity to get rid of him once and for all. Chu Luiyue took out a bead. This was taken from fourth young master's body before. It's also the cause of his illness. Lu Yi once admitted that it was his sister who did it. Lin Tianfeng was shocked. But he had to believe it. Because Chu Luiyue didn't have to lie to him about this. Lu Yu, her brother, and Lu Ruhai did offend her, but with her current status, she could easily kill them. Why would she make up such a lie? She has someone behind her. Lin Tianfeng thought for a while and asked. Chu Luiyue handed over the bead. I wonder if Master Lin recognizes the pattern on it. Lin Tianfeng carefully took the bead with both hands and looked at it carefully. After a moment, he frowned and shook his head. This seems to be the totem of some clan, but I've never seen it. Is this the person behind Lu Yu? Lin Tianfeng's voice trembled slightly when he spoke. It was indeed difficult for him to accept these things in such a short time. After all, he had always trusted and doted on Lu Yu, all these years. He even had some opinions about Lin Qifei because he didn't approve of Lu Yu. Now it seemed ridiculous. Chu Luyue shook her head regretfully. In fact, this result was already within her expectations. Then it seems that we need to look again. Lin Qifei stepped forward and took the bead. Father, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. When my body fully recovers, I will seek justice for myself. Lin Tianfeng's lips moved and he sighed, as if he had aged a few years in an instant. He patted Lin Qifei's shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry. When we go back this time, Father will deal with them personally." As for Lu Ruhai, he had automatically abandoned the word elder. A traitor was no longer qualified to be called that. How about we leave it to the princess? Chu Luyue touched her chin and smiled. Good. Chapter 1099. At this moment, Lu Ruhai, who was next door, also knew that Chu Luyue had arrived. He paced around the room anxious and worried. As a pinnacle 9th grade celestial physician, he was generally respected wherever he went. Therefore, he had always been very arrogant and did not take others seriously. He was also used to having an arrogant temper. But this time, he knew very well that he had kicked an iron plate. Ever since Chu Luyue's identity as princess consort was confirmed during the consort selection ceremony last night, he was dumbfounded. He did not even remember how he came back. There was only one sentence echoing in his mind. It's over. It's all over. It would have been fine if he had offended others, but he had offended Chu Luyue. Moreover, looking at the saint's protection of her, he knew that he had completely offended the saint this time. Lu Ruhai had been feeling uneasy ever since he returned. Originally, he had hoped that Chu Luyue and the rest would be busy with their own matters and would not care too much about other things. But she still came. Lu Ruhai could not wait to rush over and listen to what they were talking about. The current him still did not know that his fate had actually been decided during the idle conversation between the few of them. Yan Qing quickly returned. Chu Luyue placed a medicinal cauldron in the room and helped him refine medicine. Of course, she did not use the heavenly square cauldron. Lin Qifei's body was in the final stage of recuperation. He did not even need to refine the medicine. He only needed to brew the medicine. In about an hour, the medicine was ready. The rich medicinal fragrance filled the entire room. Taking a deep breath made one's body and mind feel much better. Lin Tianfeng's original grief and anger also magically calmed down. Lin Qifei used the medicine. His originally pale face gained some color. Actually, his body recovered faster than Chu Luyue expected. On one hand, Lin Qifei was talented. On the other hand, the rich force of heaven and earth in the Yuntian Tower was very good for the body's recuperation and cultivation. Chu Luyue looked at Lin Tianfeng. I'll have to trouble Master Lin to invite Lu Ruhai over. Lin Tianfeng was stunned for a moment, then nodded. After he left, Lin Qifei looked at Chu Luyue and said firmly, "Thank you. Is there anything else I can help you with?" Chu Luyue smiled. Lin Qifei was indeed smart. Dealing with smart people was indeed a lot easier. I do have something that I would like to ask for your help with. What? I would like to ask you to help me build a teleportation array formation. Lin Qifei's eyes flashed slightly. Deep in his eyes, which were as clear as a lake, there seemed to be some waves. I'll go wherever I come from. Chu Luyue blinked. From the cave heaven cliff to the Tianling dynasty. As soon as he finished speaking, the room fell into a dead silence. Lin Qifei subconsciously looked at Yan Qing, who was standing next to him. Yan Qing works for His Highness. Don't worry. No one will know about this. Chu Luyue said with a smile. Anyway, Rongxiu would know what she wanted to do sooner or later, so she might as well be frank. Lin Qifei's expression changed slightly. He was really surprised. His Highness doesn't know about this. He will pretend not to know even if he knows. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and smiled meaningfully. Her words were very natural and firm. At this moment, Lin Qifei suddenly understood why her eyes were always curved and bright when she talked about her husband. Because she had always trusted and relied on that person. Perhaps she didn't even realize that she was acting coquettishly. Lin Qifei paused. The sects and clans in the world of divine ruins are not allowed to connect with the outside world privately, let alone build teleportation formations. That's why I came to you. Chu Luiyue smiled carelessly. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't have the guts. Even if they had the guts, they wouldn't have the ability. But you have both, fourth young Master Lin. The cave heaven cliff guards a door. You know better than anyone how to do this. Besides, you will be the cliff master of the cave heaven cliff sooner or later. It is your territory. It would be best if you are willing to help. I can guarantee that this will be kept a secret. You will not be implicated in any trouble. Fourth young Master Lin, do you agree? Lin Qifei was silent for a moment. Then he smiled helplessly. Since you've already put it this way, how can I refuse? Chu Luiyue had saved his life. It was only right that he repay her with his life. Besides, she didn't hesitate at all. She believed that he could do it. This was the greatest affirmation for him. Lin Qifei knew that he was talented in this area. But he had been seriously ill for many years and didn't dare to have any delusions. He only hid in the dark and occasionally acted. He was not without regrets. Young people were always full of youthful vigor. Who didn't want to achieve great things? It's a deal. Chu Luiyue smiled. Fourth young Master Lin, I look forward to working with you. Lu Ruhai was quickly brought over. Chu Luiyue and the others in the room had already recovered. No one could guess what had happened in that short period of time. Elder Lu, Chu Luiyue greeted him with a smile. Why do you look so tired today? Did you not have enough fun yesterday? Lu Ruhai's heart skipped a beat. Greetings, Your Highness. As he spoke, he bowed with trepidation. Chu Luiyue sat there and slowly poured a cup of tea. But she didn't drink it. Time passed slowly. Lu Ruhai bowed and held his hands. He felt uncomfortable all over. He specialized in celestial physician. His cultivation level as a martial artist was very ordinary. So when Chu Luiyue deliberately exerted pressure, he couldn't bear it. It wasn't until his legs started to tremble and his face turned red that Chu Luiyue spoke casually. Elder Lu, you don't have to be so polite. I'm here today because I have some questions for you. Chu Luiyue looked up at him as she spoke. Her dark and sharp eyes were like blades that could cut through everything. Who is Lu Yue's backer? Lu Ruhai was shocked. He suddenly raised his head, but when he met those cold eyes, he quickly lowered his head. I don't know what Your Highness is talking about, Yan Qing. Chu Luiyue called out lazily. Yan Qing stepped forward with an expressionless face and kicked Lu Ruhai's knee hard. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was particularly crisp. Ah! Lu Ruhai screamed and knelt on the ground. He wanted to curse out loud, but he didn't forget that the other party was now someone he couldn't afford to offend. So he could only ask Lin Tianfeng for help. Master! Master, save me! Chu Luiyue interrupted him. Elder Lu, there's no need to shout. Master Lin has already taken the initiative to give you to me. Life or death, it's all up to her. Lu Ruhai's heart sank. He forced himself to raise his head. His lips were pale. Why Your Highness just took the throne, but you can't wait to kill someone who offended you. Aren't you afraid of being criticized for being narrow-minded and ruthless? Chu Luiyue suddenly smiled and said word by word, "It's because you just took the throne that you have to set rules." Chapter 1100. Everyone knew that Lu Ruhai had offended her. If she let it go just like that, no one would thank her for her generosity. They would only think that she was weak and easy to bully. Someone had come knocking on her door and almost humiliated her in public. This kind of thing could be tolerated, but should not be tolerated. If they knew that even someone like Lu Ruhai could escape unscathed from her, who knew how much trouble they would cause in the future? Chu Luiyue clearly remembered that when she first came here, those people in Cold Mountain Valley were still talking about how the people of the Immortal Water Tomb would deal with her. If even people of their status could think of this, it could be seen that others also thought so. Chu Luiyue came from outside the realm. Although she had performed outstandingly before, on the mountaintop, when she faced the infinite divine dial, the results were even more stunning. But in the end, she did not have the support of a powerful sect behind her. So what if she was the emperor of the Tianling dynasty? In the eyes of these people, she was still not worth mentioning. Therefore, she had to let these people understand that she was not to be trifled with. Apart from that, she had another purpose for interrogating Lu Ruhai. She wanted to find out who Lu Yuer's backer was, in case the enemy was in the dark while she was in the light, and she did not know when she would be schemed against. After all, she was now on the same side as Lin Qifei. If she could really connect Heavenly Cave Cliff and the Tianling dynasty with a teleportation formation, then it would be much more convenient for her to travel between these two places in the future. Moreover, it would not be just her. With her current status, of course, she could enter and leave the Divine Ruins world as she pleased, but there were also great limitations. Rongxiu, as the Holy Sun, was watched by many people. In the future, she would certainly not lack the same treatment. From this point of view, Chu Luiyue hoped that she could not rely on Rongxiu and establish her own power and influence. This way, she could leave another path open. Elder Lu, the sooner you explain clearly, the sooner you will suffer less, won't you? Chu Luiyue smiled leisurely. She was clearly smiling, but it made people unconsciously feel a deep sense of fear. Lu Ruhai's eyes averted. I don't know. Yan Qing, help Elder Lu Ruhai recall. See if he can remember anything. Chu Luiyue raised his chin. Yes. Yan Qing responded and immediately stepped forward to attack again. Don't, Lu Ruhai didn't even have the chance to struggle and defend himself before he was sent flying by Yan Qing's kick. He slammed into the wall. Yan Qing quickly followed up and hit the most vulnerable and painful part of his body. Not long after, Lu Ruhai's initial resistance gradually turned into begging for mercy. Chapter 1101. Chu Luiyue truly did not know whether to praise the Holy Sun for his foresight, strategizing, and resourcefulness. He had actually prepared such a thing in advance. But seeing that a certain someone seemed to be aware of this, Chu Luiyue still very cooperatively invited him to sleep on the floor. Originally, she did not want to let Rongxiu stay, but considering that there were still many soldiers guarding outside, it was really inappropriate to chase him out like this. In the end, Chu Luiyue chose to settle for the next best thing. The Holy Sun was very satisfied with this result. Some things were quite good to get used to in advance. In the end, the two peacefully began the night of not sharing a bed. Chu Luiyue was on the bed, and Rongxiu was on the floor. She had a trace of hesitation at first, but when she saw Rongxiu very calmly and politely take out 2 blankets, neatly make one bed, and even leave one for the other, Chu Luiyue felt that her hesitation was really unnecessary. Then, she simply closed her eyes, intending to sleep. Dusk fell, and the lights in the room went out one by one. The surroundings darkened. Rongxiu seemed to have already laid down, and was not far from her. Actually, this bedchamber was very large, and there was a lot of space to sleep on the floor. But Rongxiu still tried his best to fight for this last bit of compromise for himself. According to him, it was already pitiful enough that they were forced to sleep separately right after taking a consort. If they were too far apart, he would still not be able to sleep well. And so, Chu Luiyue had him sleep on the floor next to the bed, and at the same time, set up a barrier. It was quiet. Chu Luiyue lay on the bed, but she could not fall asleep no matter how hard she tried. After a long while, she finally opened her eyes. Moonlight spilled in through the window, as cool as water, casting faint shadows on the floor. Chu Luiyue turned her head and looked at Rongxiu, who was sleeping not far away. From here, she could clearly see Rongxiu's sleeping face. He rested his head on his arm, one of his long legs curled up. Even though the surrounding light was dim, the moonlight still clearly outlined the perfect lines of his face. The inexplicable anxiety and uneasiness in Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly dissipated. It was as if as long as this person was by his side, all problems would be easily solved. She blinked and tilted her body slightly to take a closer look. Even though he was sleeping, he was still as handsome as ever. It would be fine if he didn't open his eyes. Once it opened, it would suck in one's soul. It was as if it could pull one into a bottomless abyss, causing one to sink into oblivion. Suddenly, his brows furrowed as if he was having a nightmare. Then, his frown deepened. A faint layer of cold air covered his entire body. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Soon, she saw that there was a layer of frost on the ground. Under the reflection of the moonlight, it flashed with a bone-chilling light. Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue called out to him. But Rongxiu only curled up his body slightly. That thin layer of blanket covering his body seemed insignificant at this moment. Chu Luiyue sat up. Rongxiu. Rongxiu's face was buried in the shadows and couldn't be seen clearly. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips, dispersed the barrier, and walked over. Rongxiu, if you continue to pretend, I'm going to get angry. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she finally saw Rongxiu's face clearly. When she saw that his thick eyelashes were also covered with a layer of frost, she finally realized that something was wrong. She quickly bent down and touched his face. It was cold to the touch. It was so cold that Chu Luiyue felt cold all over. Rongxiu seemed to feel something. He grabbed her hand and pulled her into his embrace. His movements were rough and wild, completely different from his usual gentleness and restraint. Chu Luiyue tried her best not to scream out loud as she released the force from her body and followed his strength to fall into his arms. Rongxiu's iron arms wrapped around Chu Luiyue and his long legs pressed down. He easily trapped her tightly in his embrace. Chu Luiyue's chest tightened. When she finally struggled out of his embrace and raised her head, she saw that his brows were slowly relaxing. Then, under Chu Luiyue's gaze, the frost on his eyelashes gradually melted. His originally cold skin gradually warmed up and returned to its normal temperature. Chu Luiyue didn't notice that the frost on the ground beside them was also disappearing bit by bit at this time. Rongxiu's eyelashes moved. Just when Chu Luiyue thought that he was going to wake up, Rongxiu changed to a more comfortable position and hugged her. His breathing gradually became long and deep. Chu Luiyue was confused. Is he asleep? The series of actions made Chu Luiyue suspect that he did it on purpose. However, seeing that he seemed to have really fallen asleep, Chu Luiyue couldn't bear to wake him up. Perhaps, he really hasn't slept well during this period of time. Chu Luiyue looked at him for a while, raised her head slightly, leaned over, and gently tapped his lips. Then, she snuggled back into his arms and closed her eyes to sleep. For some reason, she fell into a deep sleep very quickly this time. After a long time, when she was completely asleep, the man in the dark slowly opened his eyes. He looked at her with a deep gaze. Although this consumed a little of his force, but it was very wise to let them prepare a double quilt in advance. The next day, Chu Luiyue woke up on the bed. Rong Xiao had already gone out. She subconsciously glanced at the ground. Yes, it's clean and tidy. The quilt has been carefully kept away by the Holy Sun. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. Rong Xiao's body. I'll have to ask again if there's really something wrong with it. However, before she could ask, Dugu Maobao arrived. You're awake. If you're awake, get up and play chess. Chu Liuyue's head hurt. However, when she thought of Rong Xiao, she gritted her teeth, quickly washed up, and invited Dugu Maobao in. Let's begin. For the next few days, Chu Liuyue's life was the same every day. Every day, she would play chess with Dugu Maobao, then go to the training field to fight with the puppets for 4 hours. After that, she would spend some time to reflect and improve her cultivation. In between, she would also help Lin Qifei treat his illness and refine medicine. Usually, she could only see Rong Xiao at night. Chu Luiyue could feel that Rong Xiao was very busy. However, he didn't say what he was busy with, and Chu Luiyue didn't take the initiative to ask. It was just that he often couldn't sleep well at night. Chu Luiyue couldn't stand it anymore and would end up sleeping on the floor with him every time. Of course, she would always return to bed the next morning. The 5 days set by Dugu Maobao passed quickly. The puppets that Chu Luiyue fought with had really changed to mid-level level 8. Moreover, the time she spent every day on this had also increased to 6 hours. The results of the high-intensity training were also very obvious. Chu Liuyue's close combat strength had improved a lot compared to before. In addition, although she hadn't been able to quickly break through in martial artist cultivation. However, Chu Luiyue had broken through to the peak of level 8 as a mystic master. The distance to level 9 was within reach. He was indeed born in the Divine Ruins realm, but he was sent back to the Dark North a long time ago. But he hasn't cut off contact with this side. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. If that was the case, many things could be explained clearly. But why was he sent back? Countless people in the world fought to enter the Divine Ruins realm and establish a foothold here. And Jun Juqing was like. At that time, the family he was in was very quarrelsome. In order to save his life, the people above sent him away. And that family has a good relationship with the Dark North, so. Then he's not the biological son of the Dark North Emperor. Of course not. But because of his special identity, Jun Qiji has always treated him like his own son. Even in the Dark North royal family, only a handful of people know about this. But you know. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. Rong Xiao raised his eyebrows and smiled. If I don't know about this, then the position of the Son of Heaven wouldn't be mine. He was just teasing with a smile on his lips, but Chu Liuyue's heart tightened when she heard it. She only had a rough idea of Rong Xiao's background and could finish it in a few words. But only Rong Xiao himself knew how much hardship and sadness was contained in these simple words. He was never recognized by the family, but he became one of the top existences in the family. It was obvious how much he had gone through. So, Jun Juqing has also returned to the Divine Ruins realm. Yes. Rong Xiao suddenly thought of something and his expression faded. Chu Luiyue was deep in thought. Although Jun Juqing had not broken through to the God realm, but, with such a background, it was not a big problem for him to enter and leave the Divine Ruins realm. Chu Luiyue rested her chin on one hand and muttered, but after all, he was raised outside. Could it be that his family really doesn't have any grudges? It's all because he has a good master. Rong Xiao said. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Master. His master is a student. Rong Xiao suddenly stopped halfway. Just as Chu Luiyue was about to ask again, there was a knock on the door. Your Highness, there's an urgent letter. It was Yu Mo's voice. Rong Xiao got up and went to open the door. Yu Mo respectfully handed it over and said, "This is the academy." Before he could finish, Rong Xiao suddenly stopped him with a look. He glanced around and noticed that Chu Luiyue was inside. Yu Mo quickly fell silent. Rong Xiao did not open the letter. He just turned around and told Chu Luiyue that he had to deal with something temporarily and then left. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. Study. Academy. Did Rong Xiao want to say this just now? Chu Luiyue could not think of an answer, so he simply put this matter to the back of his mind and went to see Lin Qifei for the last time. After a few days of careful recuperation in Yuntian Tower, Lin Qifei's complexion was much better. In the past, he looked like a piece of sparkling and fragile glass, but now, he seemed to have a bit more of a human touch. Coupled with his gradually increasing strength, no one dared to underestimate him. Chu Luiyue brewed the last medicine. Lin Qifei held the medicine, paused for a moment, and drank it in one gulp. Thank you. He looked at Chu Luiyue with a serious expression. Chu Luiyue smiled and shook his head. It's nothing. But I'll have to trouble you with the teleportation formation. Lin Qifei nodded and then said, actually, with my current strength, it might be a little difficult to complete this alone. So I think I'll think of a way to improve my strength first, and then, sharpening the knife won't delay the cutting of wood. Chu Luiyue finished his sentence and smiled. Of course, it's no problem if you think so. But, what do you plan to do specifically? Dongtian Cliff. There shouldn't be anyone who can teach you, right? Even if there was, he might not trust them. Lin Qifei paused and said, I want to go to Lingxiao College first. Chu Luiyue was stunned. What? Lingxiao College? Lin Qifei saw her reaction and thought that she did not know, so he patiently explained, Lingxiao College is the top college in the Divine Ruins world. There are many top experts there. If you can cultivate there, you will definitely benefit greatly. So, Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something and interrupted him. Rong Xiao also has contact with this college, right? If it was really as she said, that she didn't have any sects or clans to rely on in the Divine Ruins world, then Lingxiao College was the best place to go. Chu Luiyue also thought of this. She narrowed her eyes and began to seriously think about this matter. What you said makes sense. Other than being a little curious about Rong Xiao, she could improve her cultivation and expand her network. It was simply the best of both worlds. Although Yuntian Tower was good, she always felt that it wasn't very free. When she thought of the few revered elders who were especially against her and Rong Xiao, Chu Luiyue felt a little annoyed. It seemed inconvenient for her to do anything she wanted. Here, as the Wangfei, her every word and action was always being watched. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue wanted to go to Lingxiao College even more. I'll think about this matter again. Chu Luiyue said and stood up. As for you, just go if you want to. Just don't forget the agreement between us. Lin Qifei nodded solemnly. Since Wang Fei has instructed, I will do my best. After Chu Luiyue returned to her bedroom, she began to think about Lingxiao College again. Dugu Mabao saw that she seemed to be a little absent-minded, so he asked casually. What are you thinking about? Chu Luiyue paused and asked. Debao, have you heard of Lingxiao College? Dugu Mabao paused in his actions and looked up at her without batting an eyelid. His pair of demonic purple eyes were deep and unreadable. I've heard of it. Why did you suddenly think of it? I'm wondering if I should go and take a look. Chu Luiyue didn't hide her intentions from Dugu Mabao. I heard that if I can go, it will be very beneficial to my cultivation. Dugu Mabao was expressionless. Do you think that I'm not good enough to teach you? Of course not. Chu Luiyue glanced at him. Of course, she knew what an honor it was to be taught by such a god-level expert. But after all, a college was different from a person. I just think that going to the college has its own benefits. To be able to stand in the world of divine ruins for 10,000 years, it must be an extraordinary existence, and... Chu Luiyue paused for a moment. And I have a feeling that this place is a little familiar. Dugu Mabao lowered his eyes. After a while, he said. Up to you. Then, as if he suddenly thought of something, he asked. What did Rongxiu say? Chu Luiyue waved her hand. I don't intend to tell him about this. Dugu Mabao looked up in surprise. Chu Luiyue blinked and looked normal, as if she didn't think that there was anything strange about her actions. She had a feeling that Rongxiu seemed to be deliberately hiding something from her about Lingxiao College. The more he was like this, the more she wanted to go and see for herself. Dugu Mabao was silent for a while. Many people already know that you are the princess of the Yuntian Tower, and many people have seen your face. They will know if they ask around. You, who said that I want to go with this face? Chu Luiyue laughed. Dugu Mabao immediately understood. You've made up your mind. Yes. Chu Luiyue looked much more serious. In addition to the reasons I told you before, there is one more thing. Jun Zhiqing seems to have a master over there. My father is still in Jun Zhiqing's hands, and I don't know where he is imprisoned. Maybe, this is a way. This was actually the most decisive factor. At this point, Dugu Mabao finally nodded. But, Chu Luiyue looked at Debao hesitantly. Debao, you are a little too conspicuous. Why don't I find a mask for you? You don't have to worry about that. Dugu Mabao closed his eyes. I will hide my identity on the way. After arriving at the college, no one will notice anything unusual. At night, Rongxiu came back. Just as Chu Luiyue was hesitating to find an excuse, Rongxiu spoke first. I have to go out for a while. I'm afraid I can't stay with you for the time being. In fact, the other side had been urging him for a long time. He really couldn't delay it, so he said this. Chu Luiyue almost instantly guessed that it must be related to Lingxiao College. Then I will concentrate on cultivating during this time and wait for you. Chapter 1104. Rongxiu kissed her forehead. I've already sent people to investigate Lord Chu Ning's matter. After a while, there should be some clues. Chu Luiyue was stunned, and a warm current surged in her heart. She nodded slightly. That night, Rongxiu was finally able to put away the blanket and lay on the bed. The two fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, Rongxiu left, leaving Umo to take care of Chu Luiyue. As soon as he left, a few revered elders came to see her. Chu Luiyue asked Umo to reject them all, and only told them that she was going to start her seclusion. As the princess, Chu Luiyue was now living in the sacrificial god temple. Other than the clan leader and the Holy Sun, no one else was allowed to come here. Of course, there was now Chu Luiyue. So, as long as she didn't want to, these revered elders couldn't see her. So, Chu Luiyue stayed in the palace and started her seclusion, while Umo waited outside attentively. It would be extremely troublesome to leave the cloud Tianke without anyone noticing. Because from here, one had to go through the teleportation formation that led to the outside world. But it was different for Chu Luiyue. Because she had the holy ring on her hand. So, she could easily open the teleportation formation in the sacrificial god temple. In addition, she also asked Dugu Mabao to help her leave a trace of her aura, and poured it into a puppet, pretending to be her. Coupled with the barrier, as long as Umo didn't take the initiative to barge in, he wouldn't be discovered. Even if he realized that something was wrong, Chu Luiyue would have already left by then. So, Chu Luiyue quietly left the Yuntian Tower and went to Lingxiao College. Lingxiao College was very far from the Yuntian Tower. In addition, Chu Luiyue didn't dare to directly go through the Yuntian Tower's teleportation formation, so she deliberately took a few turns in the middle, which took more time. But fortunately, with Dugu Mobao, they had a smooth journey. After about 5 days, Chu Luiyue and Dugu Mobao finally arrived at Fong Prefecture. The Fong province was the closest city to the Spirit Firmament Academy. Everyone who wanted to enter Lingxiao College had to pass through here. Walking out of the teleportation formation, Chu Luiyue sighed as she looked at the city not far away, and sighed. Fong Prefecture. It's indeed worthy of its reputation. Under the bluish-purple sky, a majestic and quaint city sat on a vast plain. The grayish-white boulders were piled up, rough and imposing, and the pressure was heavy. Behind the city, there was a huge wall. Rumor had it that Lingxiao College was behind the city. Outside Lingxiao College, there's a barrier formed by divine power. Anyone who wants to enter must obtain a pass from Fong Prefecture. Dugu Mobao explained. Chu Luiyue nodded. At this time, the two of them had carefully dressed up. Chu Luiyue was wearing a long blue robe, with a white jade belt around her waist. She wore a golden crown on her head. She was tall and handsome. At first glance, she looked like a young master from a noble family. She didn't show off, but she didn't let others look down on her. As for Dugu Mobao, who was beside her, he had already transformed into the same black hair and black eyes as her. His appearance was also somewhat different from before. He had changed from a top-notch cute girl to an ordinary one. In the past, when he walked on the streets, his face could inspire the motherly love of almost all women. But now, he seemed to be very concerned about this, and deliberately disguised himself as an ordinary one. Except for the cold and indifferent look in his eyes, he was almost completely different from before. If people didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see anything unusual. Pass, Chu Luiyue murmured. Before coming, she had heard Dugu Mobao mention this matter. Lingxiao College was heavily guarded. Anyone who entered or left needed a pass. And there were only 2 ways to get this pass. First, it had to be related to the people in Lingxiao College. Second, find the teachers of Lingxiao College in Fong Prefecture, pass their assessment, and become a student of Lingxiao College. The first method was relatively simple, but it also had a disadvantage. The time inside was limited. Chu Luiyue couldn't expose her identity, so she could only choose the second method. Lingxiao College didn't accept students at a fixed time every year. As long as you were outstanding enough, you could come at any time. Therefore, in the world of divine ruins, almost every day, people came from all over to try to enter Lingxiao College. There were also some who stayed in Fong Prefecture and continued to cultivate while trying to find a way out. This was also one of the reasons why Fong Prefecture was so lively. However, in the end, there were only a few who could succeed. Let's go. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. Dugu Mobao shook his head. After entering Fong Prefecture, I won't travel with you. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Dugu Mobao paused. Seeing her confused expression, he gave a rare explanation. There are a few acquaintances here. I'll go and meet them. After that, I'll wait for you in Lingxiao College. Chu Luiyue's eyes widened. At this moment, she suddenly realized that she seemed to have overlooked something. So, in fact, you can directly enter Lingxiao College. Dugu Mobao raised his eyebrows. Is that strange? His tone was too matter-of-fact, with a careless arrogance, so much so that Chu Luiyue began to doubt herself. After thinking carefully, Chu Luiyue felt that her question was meaningless. With Dugu Maobao's strength, it wasn't strange for him to be able to do this. She coughed. No, it's not strange, don't make me wait too long. Dugu Maobao left these words, the void vibrated, and his figure flashed, instantly disappearing in front of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue, he was so straightforward. Chu Luiyue looked around. There were no less than 10 teleportation arrays here, but fortunately, the location of this teleportation array was relatively remote, and there was no one around, so no one paid attention to this place. She calmed herself down and began to walk forward. As she walked closer, Chu Luiyue realized that Fang Prefecture was different from ordinary cities. There was no one guarding the entrance here. In fact, there was not even a door. On both sides were walls piled up with grayish-white stones, and in the middle was a huge and wide doorway. There was even a piece of broken wall beside it, as if it had been cut by someone with a sword. It looks very casual. There were many people going in and out here. To be precise, most of them were going in, and only a small number were going out. Moreover, most of the people who went in were full of excitement and anticipation. On the other hand, most of the people who went out were full of dejection and disappointment, and their eyes were full of regret. Obviously, these people were cultivators who had given up on entering Lingxiao College. Chu Luiyue stepped in. However, just as she stepped through the doorway, a strange fluctuation suddenly came from the water droplet in her body. An unusually familiar feeling welled up in her heart. Strictly speaking, that's not the case. The woman explained in a warm voice. Generally speaking, only cultivators who reach the 9th rank before the age of 25 are qualified to enter Lingxiao College. However, if one's talent was especially outstanding, it was not impossible to make an exception. The final result would depend on the teachers and elders of the academy. Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment. Then, Mystic Master and Celestial Physician also have the same requirements? Pfft, the woman couldn't help but laugh. Of course not. These two require one to reach the 8th rank before the age of 25. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you, Mississippi, the woman smiled and nodded. She didn't take the initiative to mention her name, nor did she ask Chu Luiyue. Soon, she left with the two young men beside her. In Fang Province, countless people tried to enter Lingxiao College every day, but not many could do it. It would be too tiring and unnecessary if they had to tell each other their identities when they saw each other. Chu Luiyue didn't mind too much. After seeing them leave, he pondered for a moment and also walked in. This time, his dantian was calm. Almost as soon as Chu Luiyue entered the city, in a remote courtyard somewhere in the city, an old man with white hair bounced up from his bed with a bang. He looked around in panic as if he was afraid of something. Then, he hurriedly rushed outside. At this moment, there was a long line outside the courtyard. Most of the people standing there were young men and women. Their faces were filled with unconcealable excitement and anticipation. From time to time, they would look at the white-robed old man sitting on a chair at the front. There was a table in front of him, and there were 3 booklets on the table. In front of each booklet, there were crystals of different colors. At this moment, a young man had placed his hand on the white crystal in the middle and was concentrating on infusing his force into it. His face was flushed red. It was obvious that he was using all his strength. The people behind him didn't make a sound. It was obvious that they were also nervous. They were nervous because the test at this moment was Lingxiao College's exam. As for the old man sitting behind him, he was one of the teachers of the Spirit Firmament Academy in charge of Fangzhou City, Elder Wenxi. It was quiet all around. Elder Wenxi half closed his eyes and looked like he was about to fall asleep at any time. After a moment, a line of words appeared on the white crystal, 23 years old, peak of the 8th rank. Elder Wensi glanced at it and closed his eyes again. Eliminated. Next. The young man's face turned from red to pale. However, at this moment, Elder Wensi suddenly opened his eyes again. He suddenly stood up. He looked in the direction of the city gate in horror. At the same time, another old man rushed out of the courtyard. The two of them looked at each other and saw the expression on each other's face. Elder Wensi's eyes twitched fiercely and said in a trembling voice, that scourge is here again. Digression, cervical vertebra hurts, I can't straighten my neck. Rest for a while, continue at 6:00. That scourge is more familiar with Fong province than we are. Where could he hide? Why don't we just wait and do what we need to do? Elder Huafeng's heart was filled with anxiety. After his persuasion, he finally wavered a little. You're not allowed to run away when she comes. I know. For safety's sake, the two of them discussed moving together to avoid being alone. Thus, the two of them sat behind the table. Ahem, continue. Elder Wensi mustered up his courage and shouted. However, he did not dare to shout too loudly. He was afraid of attracting trouble. Although the young boys and girls were at a loss, when they heard this, they still obediently went forward and took the test one by one. However, the two elders in charge of the test were obviously a little absent-minded. From time to time, they would look around as if they were looking for someone or waiting for someone. However, the expression on their faces was not one of joy or anticipation. Time passed bit by bit. The two of them gradually relaxed. Perhaps. She's really fine. Otherwise, it would be strange if she didn't show up for so long. Elder Wensi was comforted. Perhaps she went to find someone else. Strange, what day is it today? There are actually two elders overseeing the test together. Seeing the long line, Luo Shishir's beautiful eyes widened slightly as a trace of surprise flashed across her face. Perhaps they knew that we were coming today. Shuoxing chuckled. The news of our arrival has always been very confidential. Besides, what kind of figures are the two elders? We are just juniors. Why would they bother to make such a big fuss? Luo Shishir shook her head and retorted. Perhaps the two elders have other arrangements, but that's not something we can ask. Let's go over as soon as possible. Luo Yanming said with a smile. As they spoke, they stepped forward and lined up at the end of the line. Chu Luyue saw them from afar, but she did not follow them. From where she was, she could not see the two elders inside, but from the long line and the whispers of the people around her, she could guess that that should be the place where Lingxiao College's test was taking place. That should be the only place to get a pass. However, Chu Luyue was not in a hurry to go over. After confirming the location, she began to leisurely stroll around the city. Every street here was very spacious and flat, and it was very lively. Walking on the streets, she could clearly feel that the auras of these people were very powerful. Although she could not tell what level they were at, she could tell a thing or two from the admission criteria of Lingxiao College. A level 9 martial artist before the age of 25 was definitely considered a top genius. But here, they were only at the entry level. Chu Luyue deeply understood what Dugu Maobao had said earlier. Here, the current her was indeed too weak. In fact, Chu Luyue's breakthrough speed was already very fast. After all, she had been reborn as a good-for-nothing with a damaged yuan meridian in her teens. Her real cultivation time had only been these 2 years. If not for those opportunities and treasures, it would have been very difficult for her to reach her current level. However, in a world where the strong were respected, only the results were important. No one cared about the process. Chu Luyue walked casually on the streets. Fong State City was very big and prosperous. Because Lingxiao College was behind it, most of the people who came here were very well behaved. Other than that, there were many vendors who bought and sold everything. Pills, yuan tools, medicinal herbs, xian formations, almost everything related to cultivation had an extremely standardized and huge market here. Chu Luiyue wanted to pick some things, but she realized that there was nothing that caught her eye. Thus, after walking for a while, Chu Luiyue returned to the place where Luo Shishir and the others had gone before. At this moment, the long line was much shorter. It was almost Luo Shishir's turn. Chu Luiyue walked over and stood at the end of the line with a few people in between. Elder Huafeng suddenly shivered and looked in Chu Luiyue's direction vigilantly. Although he had already expected this result before he came, he still couldn't hide his excitement when it really came true. Go and wait at the side first. When it's over, come back with this old man. Elder Wensi said with a smile. Next. This time, it was Luo. Greetings to the two elders. Junior Luo Yanming wants to take the Mystic Master test. Elder Huafeng suddenly interjected. Luo Yanming smiled. That's why I said you guys look a little similar. That kid is very outstanding. I'm sure the few of you should be the same, right? Quick. Test it. Luo Yanming replied and placed her hand on the black crystal beside her. Soon, a line of words slowly appeared on it. 23 years old, level 9 Xian Master. Cries of surprise could be heard from the crowd. He was only 23 years old, but he was already a level 9 Xian Master. He was truly an extremely outstanding genius. Ha! This old man's judgment can't be wrong. Elder Huafeng smiled proudly at Elder Wensi. This kid is the same as his brother. He has outstanding talent in this area. The reason why he was happy was because he was a Xian master and Elder Wensi was a martial artist. They were both 23 years old, but a level 9 Xian master was stronger than a stage 9 martial artist. Elder Wensi didn't argue with him about this and chuckled. In any case, they all came in during his shift, so this result would be credited to him. And that little girl, you come. Facing Luo Shishir, Elder Wensi and Elder Huafeng's attitude was much more amiable. Luo Shishir stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Greetings to the two elders. Junior Luo Shishir wants to test as a martial artist. Elder Wensi chuckled. Feel free to test it. Luo Shishir pursed her lips and smiled as she placed her hand on the white crystal. A moment later, words appeared. 20 years old, stage 9 martial artist. The crowd instantly quieted down. The expressions of the two elders also changed slightly. Surprise appeared in their eyes. A 20-year-old stage 9 martial artist. In the academy, he could be considered to be one of the top students. Elder Wensi was very happy. Today was simply too surprising. Other people might not be able to wait for a month for a qualified one, but today, 3 of them came at once. He even felt that his heart, which had been hurt by suspecting the appearance of that scourge, had been comforted. The Luo family is indeed a gathering of geniuses. The younger generation is actually so outstanding. Luo Shishir blushed slightly. Elders, you flatter me. She took her black jade token and felt the slightly cold touch. Only then did she feel a little more at ease. According to your talent, you could have come a long time ago. Why did you take so long? Elder Wensi asked curiously. Luo Shishir said with some embarrassment. Actually, the 2 brothers could have come a long time ago, but they waited for me, so she insisted on waiting until she broke through to become a stage 9 martial artist. After all, Lingxiao College was the top college in the Divine Ruins world. She wanted to perform as well as possible, so she waited until now. Elder Wensi and Elder Huafeng laughed, but they didn't ask in detail. It's a good thing that you have a good relationship. When you reach the college, let Luo Yenlin take you around. The scene was lively and joyous. When the onlookers saw this, they were all envious. After that, more than a dozen people were tested, but no one passed. However, the two elders were already very happy. Especially Elder Wensi. These three people were all on his side. Next, Chu Lua stepped forward. She was the last one. Greetings to the two elders. Chu Lua bowed politely. Her words and actions were all like that of a young master from an aristocratic family. It was pleasing to the eye. This also made many people who were about to leave stop in their tracks, wanting to take a look. Only then did Elder Wensi and Elder Huafeng carefully size up the youth in front of them. They couldn't tell his background, but this aura was indeed rare. Junior Chuyu wants to take the Celestial Physician test. To be safe, Chu Lua still chose the Celestial Physician test. However, as soon as she finished speaking, the two elders opposite her were stunned, as if they had heard something stimulating. Elder Huafeng stared at her. Chu Yu. Which you? Chu Lua was stunned for a moment. She said almost subconsciously. Wu Yu. The two elders heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. Here, this is your pass, and also your identity item in the academy. You must take good care of it. Thank you, Elder. Chu Lua took it with both hands and smiled humbly and politely. Every word and action of his was flawless. She held the black jade token in her hand and injected a strand of her origin power into it. The academy's totem lit up with a faint fluorescent light. Chu Liuyue's name appeared below, Chu Yu. She looked at the black jade token in her hand with a complicated mood. Lingshao College seemed to be an unattainable place before, but now, she had actually become a member of it. The surrounding people watched with envy. Elder Wensi looked at the sky and chuckled at Elder Huafeng. These four little fellows are all on my head. Elder Huafeng pursed his lips. Lucky bastard. Elder Wensi didn't care about his teasing. This time, he could show off when he returned to the academy. Yesterday, I was still envious of that old thing Liang Xiao for taking in an outstanding mystic cultivator. She's very good at teleportation arrays at such a young age. I didn't expect my luck to be even better today. Chu Liuyue's ears twitched slightly. That person, it should be Lin Qifei. Because she deliberately took a detour on the way, she was a step late. However, this was also good. Chu Liyue didn't tell Lin Qifei that she was coming too. As for after that, she would temporarily act as Chu Yu in the academy. The fewer people who knew about some things, the safer they would be. Humph. Elder Huafeng snorted coldly. Go ahead and be happy. Be careful of that calamity. Halfway through his sentence, Elder Huafeng realized that there were still many people watching and hurriedly kept quiet. However, these words were obviously very useful to Elder Wensi. The smug look on his face immediately disappeared, and he looked around vigilantly. If Elder Huafeng hadn't mentioned it, he would have almost forgotten about it. Cough, time's up. Huafeng, it's your turn to be on duty. I'll bring these little fellows back to the academy first. Elder Huafeng almost jumped up. You're leaving. What did you say just now? Didn't we agree to go together? If he left now, would he be able to resist that calamity alone? Elder Wensi stroked his beard. There's nothing I can do about it. Look at the kids, they're all waiting. I have to send them back as soon as possible. Hold on for a while longer. Anyway, someone will come to take over in a few hours. Elder Huafeng gritted his teeth in anger. What a nice way to put it. Normally, it wouldn't be a problem for him to guard this place alone for 10 days to half a month, but how could it be the same now? As soon as he thought of that scourge waiting for an opportunity in some corner, he felt unwell. You go back and call someone over immediately. Elder Huafeng thought about it and made a concession. Elder Wensi immediately agreed. Chu Liuyue's gaze swept across the two elders, and a trace of doubt appeared in his heart. Strange, why did it feel like they were afraid of something? This was Fang Zhou. If they walked forward and crossed the huge silver barrier, they would arrive at Lingshao College. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was their territory. What exactly was it that made them so vigilant and worried? Luo Shih and the others also vaguely sensed something, but they were not as sharp as Chu Liyue. They only thought that the two elders had other arrangements, so they did not pay much attention to it. On the other hand, Chu Liyue made them more interested. From time to time, they would look in Chu Liyue's direction. Chu Liyue nodded slightly at the few of them and took the initiative to greet them. I'm Chu Yu. Please guide me in the future. This gentle and polite attitude made Luo Shih and the others lower their guard against him and have a good impression of him. I couldn't tell that you had some ability. Zhuoxing crossed his arms, and the expression on his face was a little awkward. In detail, the other party's talent was obviously much better than his, and when he entered the city gate earlier, he still treated him with that kind of attitude. It was rare for Zhuoxing to feel a little embarrassed. However, a man's pride and competitiveness did not allow him to lower his head and apologize, so he could only speak awkwardly. Chu Liyue did not seem to care much and chuckled. Thank you for the compliment. If that was the case, everyone who entered or left Lingshao College would leave traces behind. Then, what about Dugumobao? He had said that he would wait for her in the academy. He should be inside now, right? He had no idea how he got in. However, judging from the current situation, everything was still very calm. Next, Zhuoxing. Zhuoxing looked excited and quickly went forward. He followed Luo Yanming's previous method and placed the black jade token on it. The same scene happened again. He quickly flashed into the barrier. Elder Wensi smiled and waved at Luo Shih. Luo Shih also entered very smoothly. Finally, it was Chu Liyue's turn. Come, kid, it's your turn. Elder Wensi shouted. Like the previous few people, Chu Liyue walked forward. At this moment, she was only one step away from the barrier. She took out the black jade token. However, at this moment, an image suddenly flashed through her mind. In the image, there seemed to be a person standing in front of the barrier. That person's figure was very blurry and could not be seen clearly. However, this did not affect Chu Liyue from seeing the fair and beautiful hands. Her fingertips danced, and several streams of light flew out and intertwined in midair. Soon, a small Xian formation was formed. Although the Xian formation was not big, it was very complicated. Countless lines of starlight intertwined, and it was almost dazzling. Then, that person pushed the small Xian formation forward. The Xian formation lightly attached to the barrier. Buzz! A slight sound came from the barrier. Then, several lines lit up on it. That was the Xian formation buried in the barrier. At this moment, it was directly summoned. The two Xian formations, one big and one small, were attached to each other, and seemed to have some kind of mysterious connection. Then, a hand lightly tapped on the small Xian formation. The Xian formation shattered. At the same time, the big Xian formation also shattered. Above the enchantment, a hole was silently broken in an instant. When the hole was big enough to allow a person to pass through, that blurry figure instantly flashed into it. The speed was so fast that Chu Liyue could not see it clearly. However, after the figure disappeared, she could clearly see that the hole in the barrier had quietly returned to its original state. It was exactly the same as before. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that the barrier could be opened so easily. Just as Chu Luiyue was exclaiming in her heart, a furious reprimand suddenly sounded in her mind: "You secretly opened the barrier again. Go back and reflect on your mistakes." Then, the scene disappeared. Chu Luiyue's expression became a little strange. "What's wrong?" Elder Wenxi noticed her abnormality and could not help but ask. "Nothing." Chu Luiyue came back to her senses, shook her head, and took out the black jade token. Then, she paused slightly and looked at Elder Wenxi beside her and asked, "Elder Wenxi, Elder Huafeng, is he usually in charge of guarding the barrier?" Elder Wenxi was stunned for a moment and looked at her strangely. "Why did you think of asking this?" Chu Luiyue smiled slightly. "This barrier has the power of a Xian formation. I heard that Elder Huafeng is a Xian master, so the barrier of the academy is usually guarded by several elders. Each person is in charge of a different area. Huafeng did do this in the past, but later on, he refused to do it." Elder Wenxi shrugged with a subtle expression on his face. "He said it was too tiring." Chu Luiyue, guarding the barrier doesn't seem to be tiring for a Xian master powerhouse. Chu Luiyue recalled the irritable shout that flashed through her mind just now. Looks like it's Elder Huafeng. I just don't know who he's shouting at." To be able to open the barrier without using the black jade token and only using the Xian formation that he built, it seems that he really has some ability. Chu Luiyue put away her thoughts and recalled that when she entered the city previously, there were fluctuations in her dantian, and her eyes flashed. She raised 120% of her spirit, suppressed the water droplets in her dantian, drew out a stream of force, and poured it into the black jade token. Buzz! The barrier opened. "Digression, Elder Huafeng, it's too difficult for me." Chapter 11:10. This time, the water droplet didn't react at all. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Elder Wenxi, on the other hand, looked at her with a surprised expression. "You. It seems that your bloodline talent is very outstanding. Generally speaking, the stronger the bloodline talent, the greater the potential of a genius. Correspondingly, when the barrier sensed this, it would also open entrances of different sizes. Among the few people just now, Zhusheng was the youngest, and Luo Shishir was the oldest. But compared to the youth in front of her, they were still far behind. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. She didn't expect that there would be such a trick in this barrier. But she didn't show it on her face. She only smiled and said, "Thank you for your praise, Elder. This is not a compliment." Elder Wenxi shook his head. "Such talent, almost." Thinking of something, he suddenly stopped and shook his head with a smile. His eyes were filled with envy and regret. "What a pity. You are a celestial physician who cultivates. If you are a martial artist, this old man will definitely think of a way to take you in as a disciple." Chu Luiyue's eyes flashed slightly, but she didn't say anything. "Let's go. Let's go in too." Lest they wait anxiously inside. Elder Wenxi laughed and followed Chu Luiyue into the barrier. After a short flash of white light, Chu Luiyue stood still and looked around. Although she was already mentally prepared, when she saw everything in front of her, Chu Luiyue was still stunned on the spot. The blue sky was clear and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. On the undulating mountain peaks, green clouds accumulated, and the branches and leaves were lush. A tall and magnificent iron-black bell tower stood in the middle and was the most conspicuous. At a glance, it seemed as if it was about to connect the heavens and the earth. Under the iron-black bell tower, there was a huge and wide white square. Black and white complemented each other. Under the illumination of the sun, it reflected a trace of holy light. Other than that, with the bell tower and the square as the center, on the surrounding mountains, one could vaguely see many exquisitely built buildings. Most of them were independent of each other. The range was so wide that one couldn't see the edge at a glance. The rich and pure origin power of heaven and earth made one feel relaxed and happy. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Although the density of the force here was slightly lower than that of the Yuntian Tower, it was superior in terms of purity. To be able to cultivate here, one's cultivation speed would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. "This is Lingshao College," Luo Shishi muttered in a low voice. Her beautiful eyes were filled with yearning and shock. Although the other two were trying their best to restrain themselves, it was obvious that they couldn't hide their excitement. Seeing is believing. Lingshao College was indeed worthy of its reputation. Yo! Wensi! Why did he bring so many children back this time? A voice suddenly came from afar. The few of them looked up and saw a gray-robed old man suddenly flying towards them. Before they could see how he moved, he was already in front of them. A moment ago, they were still a few mountains away, but in the blink of an eye, they were here. Teleport. This was something that only deities who had completely stepped into the deity realm could accomplish. Luo Shishi and the others became even more respectful. Chu Luiyue's heart also trembled slightly. Ha! That's Elder when she laughed out loud, full of pride. Xiaoji, these 4 children are all very outstanding. You can't be envious. When Elder Xiaoji heard this, he carefully sized up the few of them with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Elder Wensi's standards were very high. To be able to make him say such words proved that these people were really not bad. His gaze swept across Luo Shishi and the others one by one. Early stage level 9. Early stage level 9. Level 9 mystic. As he looked, he muttered softly, revealing a satisfied expression. Not bad, not bad. They're all good seedlings. He was still praising them, but he didn't know that the people opposite him were also shocked by this. This Elder Xiaoji could actually see through their true cultivation realm at a glance. They had clearly concealed their auras. Ha ha ha. Don't worry, in the academy, the origin devices that conceal one's aura will lose their effect. All the students' true cultivation realms will be revealed. Moreover, Xiaoji's eyesight is a little sharp, so it's normal for him to be able to see through your standards. Elder Wensi seemed to have seen through their uneasiness and explained with a smile. Hearing this, Luo Shishi and the others were relieved. At the same time, they felt even more reverence for the academy. People in the entire divine ruins world would not casually reveal their strength when they went out. Therefore, many origin devices were specially used to conceal one's aura. However, they did not expect that these items would be useless in the academy. On one hand, this proved the strength of the academy. On the other hand, this also showed that everyone in the academy was very law-abiding and did not dare to cause trouble casually. Elder Xiaoji's gaze finally landed on Chu Luiyue. Ah! The smile on his face froze slightly, and his gaze deepened. The origin device that concealed this youth's aura was actually not suppressed and broken. What's your strength? Elder Xiaoji asked. The moment he spoke, the others looked over. Only then did Elder Wensi realize that something was wrong with Chu Luiyue. Hey, Chu Yu, I couldn't tell that you actually had such a powerful origin device on you. Elder Xiaoji's eyebrows suddenly trembled. What did you say his name was? Elder Wensi comforted him. Chu Yu, you as in Wu Yu. Can't you see that this is a boy? What are you nervous about? Elder Xiaoji rolled his eyes at him. You said it as if you weren't nervous. Of course, he knew that the person in front of him was a youth. He was just casually asking. Chu Liyue was stunned for a moment, then his lips curved into a smile, and his eyes curved. Student Chu Yu, an 8th grade celestial physician. Xiaoji's pupils suddenly constricted. Don't laugh. Digression, 6 p.m. That's a good place. Elder Wensi laughed loudly. That's the territory of the weapon refiners. Weapon refiners. Luo Shishir and the others all revealed shocked expressions. That's right. Although the outside world has always said that the skills of the weapon refiners have been lost on the continent, there are still a few old fellows in our academy. It's just that because we have too few disciples, we've always kept a low profile. It was impossible not to keep a low profile. With just that few people, there was already an endless stream of people begging for help. If this was any more ostentatious, the academy's threshold would probably be broken by people. There was no other way. There were not many people who knew about the top refining techniques that were still circulating in the world. Most of the divine weapons that were circulating on the market were forged by the weapon refiners thousands of years ago, or left behind by the experts of the past. Now, the weapon refiners who truly had the strength to forge powerful divine weapons were simply too precious. It was also because of this that even though they had few people, they still occupied a quarter of the entire academy's territory. You don't have to go there if you have nothing to do. The weapon refiners are busy forging divine weapons all day long. From time to time, there will be Tianlei striking down. It won't be good if you're accidentally implicated. Elder Wensi said resentfully as he thought of something. Chapter 11-12. The few of them agreed obediently. All right, I've roughly told you about the situation in the academy. You'll have to go and take a look yourself to truly understand the rest. This old man won't waste any more time here. Elder Wensi clapped his hands. Qiao Yi, help me send these children over first. I have something to do. Elder Qiao Yi, who was suddenly pulled over to be a laborer, was confused. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Elder Wensi coughed. I'll go and urge them to let the next person on duty go to Fengzhou earlier. Didn't you just come back? Hua Feng should be watching over there right now. Why are you in such a hurry? Elder Qiao Yi found it even more strange. Generally speaking, every elder would be in charge of guarding outside for a day. Every time it was a certain time, the elder in charge of taking over would go a little earlier. However, it was rare for the previous one to call for the next one to go up as soon as he returned. Elder Wensi wanted to say something but hesitated. He couldn't say that they felt that the scourge had returned. If he said that, no one would go. It was better to hide it as long as possible. Ah, it's nothing. You know Huafeng's old habit. He likes to drink when he has nothing to do. I'm afraid that he'll secretly drink again when he's alone. It's fine if he gets drunk, but it won't be good if he delays other things. Only then did Elder Qiao nod. That's true. I've told him about this habit so many times, but he hasn't changed. Sigh, isn't it all because he was forced to quit drinking in the past? Now that he has the opportunity, he can finally drink to his heart's content. Heath, Elder Wensi's voice stopped abruptly. Qiao Yi's expression also changed slightly. Speaking of Huafeng quitting drinking. It was all thanks to a certain someone. Even the dean couldn't get him to quit, but a certain someone did it. However, the method was a little cruel, the process was a little bumpy, and Huafeng was a little miserable. As a result, he became even worse now that he was liberated. The two of them looked at each other. Qiao Yi seemed to have thought of something and couldn't bear it. Forget it, let him drink. I'll help you take care of these children. Go find someone to help him. Elder Wensi turned around and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. His strength was obviously not weaker than Elder Qiao Yi. Come. Let's go to the warriors first. Elder Qiao Yi waved his hand. Elder Qiao Yi took the lead while Luo Shishir and the others followed closely behind. Chu Luiyue quietly followed at the end of the team. As she listened to Elder Qiao Yi talk about the academy with the others from time to time, she kept looking around her. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt as if she had been here before. Coupled with the scene that had appeared in her mind earlier, she was even more certain of her guess. Unfortunately, most of her memories were incomplete. Apart from that one frame, she couldn't remember anything else. Therefore, he could only suppress his thoughts for the time being. After flying in for a while, it became much livelier. Students could be seen cultivating on almost every mountaintop. From time to time, they could also see some teachers in class. In short, it was a scene of prosperity and liveliness. Chu Luiyue felt inexplicably happy. If he could cultivate here, it would indeed be a very good thing. Then why did Rong Xiu keep hiding it from me? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. The warrior's territory is up ahead. Elder Qiao Yi suddenly shouted. As if they had sensed the movement in the sky, many people below raised their heads and looked over. Look! Elder Qiao Yi is here. Could it be that the ones following behind him are today's new students? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are actually 4 of them. I think there's a junior sister. Some people could not hide their excitement. One had to know that the proportion of female cultivators was not high on their side. Therefore, every time a junior sister entered the academy, they were very happy. Smack! A tall figure walked out from the crowd. All of you, put away your thoughts and watch your eyes. When this was said, many people shrunk their heads. It was because the person who spoke was one of the best in the academy, Luo Yanlin. Brother Lin, do you know them? The young man who was beaten up asked boldly with a grimace. Luo Yanlin snorted, but did not pay much attention to him. He flew straight up. He went straight for those people. After a while, he stood in front of Elder Qiao Yi and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Elder Qiao Yi. Luo Yanlin, why are you here today? When Elder Qiao saw him, he also laughed out loud. I just finished studying a Xian formation and came to spar with them. As Luo Yanlin spoke, his gaze landed on Luo Shishir and the others. His handsome face immediately became gentler. Also, I'm here to pick up my younger siblings. Oh. When Elder Qiao Yi heard that, he turned around to take a look. It was only then that he realized something. 4th brother. Luo Shishir and the others could not hide their excitement and shouted in unison. Shuo Sheng was cousins with them. They grew up together and had a good relationship. Therefore, she also called him 4th brother. Luo Yanlin's smile deepened. Not bad. You guys came faster than I expected. It seems that Shishir has broken through in advance. How are father and mother? Luo Shishir blushed slightly. They're doing well. They just miss 4th brother. The people who were watching from below sighed. So she was really Luo Yanlin's younger sister. And she was his biological sister. Then there was no hope for them. There were not many people in the academy who were Luo Yanlin's match. If they wanted his sister, they must be tired of living. Sigh. Why are there 3 junior brothers here? Someone sighed. When Elder Qiao Yi heard this, he glanced down and snorted. You guys are dreaming. Among these 4 little fellows, only Luo Shishir and Zhuosheng are Xian masters. Everyone looked at Luo Yanming and Chu Luiyue in surprise. The remaining 2 aren't martial artists. Luo Yanlin, bring the two of them down and familiarize yourself with them. I still have to send them off. Elder Qiao Yi instructed. Luo Yanlin nodded and waved at the two of them. Sure, Ah Xing, come with me. The two of them obediently walked to his side. After not seeing each other for a long time, they naturally missed each other. Let's go to the Xian masters next. Elder Qiao Yi said. Luo Yanlin smiled at Luo Yanming. You go first. I'll come later. On my account, those people won't bully you. Luo Yanming nodded with a smile. At this moment, Luo Shishir suddenly spoke. Chu Yu, you can do it too. Luo Yanlin glanced at his sister and followed her line of sight. It was a handsome and tall youth. His eyes were clear, and his temperament was clean. He narrowed his eyes. Chu Yu. Unexpectedly, Shuxing also raised her fist. Chu Yu, I heard that those celestial physicians are very proud. Don't be a coward. Chu Luyue blinked, chuckled, and nodded. Okay. Elder Qiao Yi suddenly turned to look at her. Chu Luyue almost instinctively stopped her back and retracted her smile by 30%. Elder Qiao Yi nodded in satisfaction. Ha! She's obedient. He was relieved. Luo Yanming was speechless when she saw how the crowd was cheering. She did not expect there to be such an elder in the world. Qingyang glanced at the crowd with a half-smile. Don't scare him. Have you figured out the Xian formation yet? Are you here to join in the fun? The crowd quickly retracted their gazes and continued studying the Xian formation. Miao Qingyang's beautiful eyes turned to Chu Luyue. This child is not bad. She raised her eyebrows slightly and revealed a meaningful smile. She could not see through the young man's strength. It was obvious that the yuan instrument he had with him was very powerful. The Luo family was one of the top families in the world of God, but Luo Yanming did not have such an item. This young man, sigh. Qingyang, this is not for you. This young man is a celestial physician. Elder Qiao Yi hurriedly explained. Miao Qingyang looked regretful. Ah. That's a pity. I feel like I have an affinity with this child. That was the truth. The young man's black and white eyes were clear like spring water. It was pleasing to look at. Vaguely, there was a sense of familiarity between his eyebrows. Elder Qiao Yi's mouth twitched. All right. Since I've brought him here, I won't stay any longer. After that, he left with Chu Luyue. Not long after, Chu Luyue smelled a strong medicinal fragrance coming from the mountain. Her eyes lit up. Someone was forming a pill. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.